Okay. Here we go. Welcome, welcome, one and all to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about the issues, both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And my guys, my gang, my friends, my ladies, we have a show for you today. Lav will be joining us shortly. She's going to be a little bit late. She let us know, but she will be here. Today, we are going to be talking about exploitation, in specifically when it comes to OnlyFans as well as streaming. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about how OnlyFans is uniquely exploitative in a lot of ways to its customer base. But I don't know if that's exactly true. I'm not sure if OnlyFans is any more or less exploitative than normally streaming. But I've gathered some people today to talk about it. So that's the topic at hand. That's what we're going to be discussing. I'm going to let each of these lovely individuals have a brief introduction, and then we'll just kind of get into it. And when Lav gets here, we'll toss her on and throw her to the wolves, so to speak. First and foremost, once again, back on my show, Brittany Simon. Hi.
Hi. So you want us to give like our opening statements,
Yeah,
basically?
just a
Okay.
brief opening statement. Tell people who you are, etc.
Okay, perfect. Brittany Simon, commentary. I've been really meditating on the subject matter, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of conflicted because when I look up the term exploitative, it's about taking advantage of somebody. It's about mistreating somebody. And it's hard for me to say that the oldest job in the book, sex work or adult work, is any more exploitative than living in a capitalistic society. But I kind of want to have a conversation about that. And I'm excited to have it with you guys today about the intentionality of being unfair towards people, whether we're selling goods or our bodies. So that's what I'm interested to talk about.
Whether it being goods or the goods, right? So we're going to
Exactly.
talk about it. We're going to talk about it and we'll get into it, and I'm sure it will be fun. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Next up, no stranger to my show, Fairy Queen, please.
So I, as some of you may have known, have elected to have a weird middle ground position, although that's not exactly true. I'm here to question the conceit of the question itself, which is the question of whether or not OnlyFans is more exploitative than streaming. And the question, of course, is exploitative to whom and for what purpose? And why do we care specifically about the word exploitation? In my mind, there are namely two reasons why we care about defining what exploitation is and defining something as being exploitative. The first one being sanctions. So we intend there to be a legal consequence or a consequence on the platform itself, or moral condemnation. And in my opinion, the conceit of this conversation is in line with a trend that has been going on for months, if not well over a year. We have been discussing issues around is OnlyFans exploitative? The way I understand it is most people understand that as being exploitative to the audience. Are the subscribers, are the users, are primarily the men who pay for OnlyFans being exploited? That's the way that most people understand that question. And I think that that to ask and frame this question again for the upteenth millionth time on this platform is misogynistic. And I think that it's time for us to be back against it. We have been discussing, I do not deny the importance of discussing male loneliness, but we have had panels on this for months. We have discussed male loneliness for months. We have discussed male relationships for months. We have discussed incels. We have discussed the red pill for well over a couple of years. For us to then have this conversation about is OnlyFans exploitative to the subscribers, to me, to frame the conversation again in this way, is one that is designed again to cater to a largely male audience, for whom are more likely to donate and are more likely to be receptive to this message. In my opinion, these types of panels, and this is not necessarily the fault of WIC, it is the fault of the audience. The audience that is largely men in their early 20s to 30s, who want to hear about how they are being exploited for paying for the porn that they watch. And we have been feeding into this for quite literally years, and it needs to stop. We need to start hitting back against it. We need to start being more critical of the way that we engage in these conversations, because it doesn't just impact the sex workers who exist within these spaces. It impacts all women and their ability to function on these platforms.
Okay, well, thanks for being here, and well, this is what we're going to talk about today, so we'll see how it goes. I appreciate you, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Next up, we have Not so erudite. Go ahead. Uh-oh.
I love when women
Cannot hear
can't
you.
speak.
Okay. Give her a minute. She's having some technical issues. I guess with that, we'll go to Lav. Lav, is OnlyFans uniquely exploitative? We're doing opening statements right now, so
Okay.
welcome.
Yes, I think that OnlyFans is uniquely exploitative to the client, to the woman engaged in it, and yes, that's my position.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Let's try Erudite again. Are you ready to try again, Erudite?
Yeah, I think so. I think the mic
Yes,
just
we can
got
hear
shut
you.
off.
We can hear you. Great.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it uniquely exploitative? Yes. I would also agree that it is uniquely exploitative.
Beautiful. Concise and to the point. We love it. And last, but certainly not least, Rora Pickles. Go ahead.
So I'm of the leaning that Twitch and other streaming platforms are more exploitative and facilitate parasocial relationships more than OnlyFans and similar platforms. However, I do believe it's unfair to both parties to view the consumer as a victim with no agency. Content creation platforms are part of the entertainment industry wherein the entertainer relies on creating a relatable brand identity that encourages consumers' loyalty and in turn produces income for the entertainer. Live streaming has a higher degree of accessibility and is more intimate, which encourages consumers to spend more time watching streams. Centering this conversation on consumers being exploited rather than the sex worker is problematic and is a false dichotomy. This is an environmental issue rather than an issue of content creators fostering a false sense of intimacy with their fan base.
Okay, and with that, let's kind of get into it. So there's a few people who think that streaming, just content streaming, just normal Twitch streaming, is more exploitative than OnlyFans. Do you guys want to kind of back that up a little bit, elaborate, and then we can kind of dig into it?
Sure, I have been in the streaming industry and I've been doing sex work for like 10 plus years off and on. And I definitely have a lot of anecdotal experience. I've also looked at some studies and stuff. I have very much seen that people get intimately attached to you when you're, say, streaming on Twitch for hours upon hours. They pick up on tiny things you do, and they start even filling in gaps of things that they think about you to fit whatever fantasy or image they may have of you. And I think that OnlyFans, although, is accessible, there is a paywall behind it. And I think that streaming being something free that you can just simply watch is a lot easier to develop those attachments and exploit. And I have seen it happen many times with, I'll just say, I've seen female content creators specifically exploit certain people and purposely develop attachments to soak them financially. So I think it's a bit more common. And although OnlyFans is most likely more mainstream than, say, Twitch or something, I definitely think it also probably happens with YouTubers. And I mean, I think we've all, as streamers, can agree that to some degree we've all technically exploited our fan bases. It could even be in like a super chat, for example. So that's my base.
Super chat. So this man who just sent me a super chat for $3. Thank you, Remy. When is your OnlyFans
Excellent.
happening, Wick? It's not. But for $3, am I exploiting him right now?
One could say. Are you reading just regular chats, or do you specifically focus on super chats? I mean, let's be real. You're like, give me money for money's sake. You straight up say that. So,
Which is not exploitative, right? Am I confused on the definition of exploitative? Am I being too literal here? It usually means to like take advantage or gain a benefit over. So
Typically for your own personal advantage specifically. So it's like taking advantage of other people like for yourself. Like, and typically, obviously, when we say like exploitation, there's an ethical implication as well. Like it's not just like it. This is why capitalism, although some might argue this, isn't inherently unethical, because like exchange of money isn't unethical inherently, but it can be depending on how it's set up.
well, that's what I mean, right? If someone's really desperate to get his attention, and what if they're not in the right state of mind, right? Like, and I guess my personal definition of exploitation would be someone who isn't in the right state of mind to make that decision.
think that's a really, really good point that we really need to hit home when we're talking about exploitation. When we say being taken advantage of, what we mean is the person is making a transaction that they do not have the ability to make. They are not able to give consent
I don't
fully
think
in
it's
order to
necessarily
make that
true.
transaction.
I don't think that this is necessarily true because we don't only make laws for the most vulnerable populations, right? We make laws for general populations, because that's just what is best. So you don't need to be like a drooling retard to have for people to make sort of at least social laws to make you less exploitable, because any single the smartest people in the world can still get into cults, they can still get into MLMs, they can still do all these things. So you're not, I mean, it just becomes too subjective at that point if we're really
What we
Yeah.
mostly do when it comes to like sanctioning these things is it's usually system wide. What we look at is there a system in place where nefarious actors have like the easiest level of access to take advantage of other individuals, and then how do we prevent that culture, that identity within the system and structure, whatever that system is, to not become exploitative in nature. So we cut off like little curves and ends to protect both client and producer. And I think one thing that's probably important to talk about here, because I feel like Fairy Queen kind of mentioned this of like the misogynist element. I think the OnlyFans conversation is really important because I think OnlyFans is probably one of the more safe platforms for women to do sex work on. And so this is where I think me and my debate partner might disagree on. I'm not sure, and I don't want to speak for her. But I want to be clear, when we're saying that there are issues with OnlyFans being exploitative, this isn't to say every woman who does OnlyFans is exploitative and is a bad person and a whore and horrible. That's not my position, at least, and I suspect
Not my
that it's not.
position
Yeah, I
either.
didn't think it was yours either. And so I think that's really important to distinct, because this isn't, we need to be able to have criticisms of like femme-dominant spaces without it falling into misogyny, which it usually does, and without it being escaped from any criticisms by just claiming misogyny. And I think in a femme-dominant panel, we can probably thread that needle, I hope.
We'll see. I don't know. I guess my question in that case, right, would be what makes, because you're of the position that OnlyFans is uniquely exploitative more than just streaming in general. So, given the fact that, as you just said, it's about the systems and things like that, what about OnlyFans and that model makes it any more or less exploitative than me streaming and promising, hey, gang, if you want to hang out in my members only stream where we play video games and become friends, you can become a member of my YouTube channel, right? And then I'll have members only streams. You can feel closer to me. You can feel like more of a involved in my life. What about OnlyFans makes it worse?
Well, obviously it's the feigned intimacy. Obviously it's the feigned intimacy. You think that you're closer, and it's in a sexual capacity. So in any capacity where, I mean, usually women streamers even will do this to some extent, make themselves available to you, make themselves look sexual to you, or at least sexually viable. And that is a way to prey on anyone, the strong, the weak, the whatever. But with OnlyFans, it's explicitly a sexual relationship. I mean, and a lot of these OnlyFans girls will, message their clients, I guess you could call them, their subscribers. Some of them, build relationships with these men, learn their kids' names, their wives' names, even their birthday, all these things, and that is uniquely. I mean, and then you're like, well, you're gonna need to pay me $50 for this thing, or maybe another 10 to see a little nip slip, or maybe a little that is uniquely just the sexual component of it. To that degree is uniquely exploitative.
The only thing I have a problem with is that you said like a lot. And I do believe that happens, but how much, I guess, do you think that happens? Could you put a percentage on that?
I don't think it matters to my point, but I think even if the woman herself isn't doing it, there's still probably 50% of OnlyFans models at least have like an agency or an assistant who will do it for them.
Well, I guess like we're trying to like the main topic is like, is it uniquely versus streaming? So like, is there a bottom line, a small percentage?
Sure,
that
but
you would-
I mean, to my point, I guess, even with sex in general, bringing it back to like the first 3 seconds of my spiel. Sorry, I'm all over the place because I just got tattoo removal and I'm like adrenaline junkie right now, so my brain's all over the place. But just the chemicals that are released in your brain when you are gooning to your favorite e-queen, is a much more addictive substance and a much more pair bonding substance than just simply watching your favorite streamer sit down, talk to you, and maybe fight someone or go out in public and act a fool. You know what I mean?
So if I can cut in, there are a couple of things that I want to respond to. So I would agree, just because it's a femme-dominant space doesn't mean that we shouldn't criticize a femme-dominant space, doesn't mean that it's not subject to criticism. But my problem with OnlyFans, and the problem that I have with saying that the creator is the one exploiting the fans uniquely, ignores what I think is a problem that is systematic and endemic to all sex. And so I'm somebody like who has recently decided that I think I'm in a transitional phase. I'm welcome to talk to those of you who've done sex work before. In fact, I'm very interested to hear what your experiences are. But I believe I'm slowly becoming anti-sex work, and at least in terms of pornographic material. And to explain to you why, this is why. I believe that when you are engaging with someone sexually, including when you are engaging with a picture that they produce, that means that you have a moral duty to ensure their well-being, to ensure that the person is actually giving full consent. And to give you an example of why this is, we would treat somebody that takes a nude, that leaks nudes, that spreads revenge porn as somebody who is beyond the pale, because that person has violated their consent. We
Wait,
know that the person who is doing this, therefore, when you are going on to OnlyFans, whether you're going on to Pornhub, XHamster, when you click on that video or when you subscribe, the problem is, even if it's true that the person is empowered and they want to be producing this content and they like doing it, I am in no position as a subscriber or user to actually know that. I don't know what's actually
okay,
going
I'm
on.
gonna
I don't
I'm
know
gonna
if
interject here because I'm confused at this point, and maybe a clarifying question. So, are you saying, is your argument that if I'm like, hey, if I'm talking to a girl in DMs and I'm like, hey, I want to see some boobies, and they send me some pics with some boobies,
Mhm.
what level of consent, like, is that enough consent? Like, do I have to get a contract signed? Like, what are we talking about, right?
I think it's different when you are considering that if it's a subscription and a paywall. Like if you're just exchanging DMs with a person that you know personally and you know this person, you have a personal relationship with this person, you actually know who they are, then you can safely assume that that person is more than likely consenting. But if it's a paywall, if it's a subscription, you don't know what's going on. There is a
Why?
very strong why? Because there's a
Hmm.
possibility that the person talking to you is not the content creator. It's actually the boyfriend that's leaking revenge porn. It's somebody who's being drugged or who's being sex trafficked and their things are being leaked. Or it's the case that it is an OnlyFans star who legitimately did consent, but their content was stolen and it was leaked onto multiple platforms. And because I would argue that we have a higher level of moral responsibility when it comes to those we sexually engage with, I would say that if you choose to engage with that picture, and because you do not know if the person for sure is actually giving consent, it is almost always going to be the case that you, in fact, are the one exploiting the person on the screen as opposed to the other way around.
I mean, it's not even just like it could be like their boyfriend doing revenge porn, but it also just could be someone who literally the only way that they can make money is through this, which is inherently exploitative. Is it really consent? Like, can you really have sex with a prostitute? Is she really consenting if the only thing that stands between her and paying her rent or being homeless is having sex with you? Is that really consent? I don't know.
I think it's really important to talk about survival sex work versus privileged sex work. So we need to have two separate conversations, if I'm going to be real with you. As a privileged sex worker, I don't feel like I have a reason to speak for sex workers who are in survival mode because that's so different. And also as a human being who has to have a job to pay rent, and I work 3 of them, OnlyFans being one of them, I should say adult work in general, I do this because it's, out of all the jobs in the world, that's like one of my favorites. So I do it from a very joyous place. So are we talking about survival sex workers or privileged sex workers?
So I am saying that just me, like out in the world searching for pornography, if I come across a picture or content that you've produced, I don't know if you're a privileged sex worker. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your position is. You could be anyone. And because of that, I have a responsibility to assume, even if it's really true that you find this joyous to work and you love producing this work and you find it to be empowering, because I cannot know for sure that you are okay, it is wrong for me to engage with your content.
I'm okay. How do you know for sure that I, as a streamer who's sitting down, putting like a lot of effort into these streams, am doing it because I'm joyously stream? Like, what about sex work in particular, or nude pictures in this case in particular, makes it more exploitative than me having to work a job that I don't want to do,
So
right?
it's hard to
In
it's hard
order
to
to live,
completely
right?
vocalize. It's hard to completely vocalize why we hold sex so sacred, but humans do. We just do. If your boss asks you to get a coffee, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go get a coffee. If your boss asks for a blowjob, you're gonna be like, hold on. And why is that? We know that intrinsically there is something sacred with our bodies, entering, exiting. There is something that we hold dear or holy that is somehow unexplainable, inexplicable. And I don't think we necessarily need to. I know that we're all like intellectuals. We want to like beat it in, right? We want to like really talk about what makes it different. But I think actionably, we don't really need to, because we all know that sex should be and is sacred to some extent, that our bodies are somehow sacred.
If I can hop onto that, right? I recognize that not everyone views sex in the same way. There are people who have multiple relationships, people who are polyamorous, people are open. Some people view it as sacred, some people don't. They just view it as a fun thing that they like to do with other people. I recognize that different people view their sexuality in different ways. But the problem is that even if you as an individual view it as that way, society doesn't treat you as that way. We know that in the society, in the country that we live in, that sex workers are discriminated against. They have, in multiple cases, people who have worked as sex workers have problems getting mortgages. In many cases, they are not able to use Venmo or PayPal. That was a problem that was filed with the ACLU. We know that there are services that they won't be delivered to. Deliveroo, for instance, that was a case in the United Kingdom where they refused to pay and to deliver to sex workers, and the sex worker union had to file a lawsuit against them in order to do it. We know that if you have worked as a sex worker and if you try to run for political office, that people will degrade you for it. They will say that you are not fit to be a candidate. So part of the reason why we care about engaging with sexual material and why we care about ensuring the dignity of people who are sex workers is because even if we individually don't think it's that big of a deal, society heavily punishes people who are sex workers. And because of that, we have to insist upon the dignity of people who work as sex workers and to treat them with as much dignity as possible. And the sad truth and reality is that unless I actually know you personally, unless I know who you are and we have a personal relationship, I cannot say with full certainty as to whether or not you have consented to creating the material. And therefore, I cannot in good faith engage with it on the risk that I might be engaging with material of you being drugged or assaulted or something bad happening to you. I do not want that guilt upon my conscience. And for that reason, I think that it has to be a full cut.
I guess I'd be super curious, Ferry. I'm just actually asking out of curiosity. It sounds like you're considering this as a personal position for yours, kind of being like, I cannot participate in the industry in any way, shape, or form because of the risk of kind of like exploitative nature of the workers or whatever. I guess, do you also feel like that's a prescription that like you would put the onus on other individuals, or are you not strong enough in it yet to like recommend it as a prescription for others?
So there are two different ways we can have this conversation. We can have it morally and we can have it legally in terms. We're speaking legally, pornography is allowed by—
Let's do morally. Yeah, let's do morally.
So I'm not talking about creating legal sanctions on people who are sex workers. I think actually sex workers need to be protected more in the society that we live in. But what I am saying is morally and ethically, I would put that as a prescription upon other people.
So
I would say that
just to be clear, if you found out that someone was engaging, like a consumer, someone was a consumer of OnlyFans, you would judge them morally for it. You would say they are making a moral mistake.
So yes,
doing a moral wrong. Yes. Okay.
And no. So like I'm going to explain, and I'll explain why. So yes, because that's what I believe, that's my position. But the second piece of this is, I think that it is simply a fact that most people have been exposed to pornography at young ages, and a lot of people have used it throughout their lives. That is consistent with a lot of the way most people have lived, have discovered their sexuality throughout their history. I think it would be hypocritical for me to say that anyone who has ever engaged in pornography or who has ever looked it up is a hypocrite and a bad person. But what I would say is that as an adult, once you realize that this is a moral and ethical responsibility, that informed consent is the number one thing that we should care about when you are engaging with someone sexually, you should care about what is happening to the person. And because you cannot be sure about what's happening to the person, you should make the moral adult development decision to not engage.
I think even
understand.
even if you're looking at it like completely logically outside of like a moral or even a Christian perspective or even like horrors or stupid perspective, OnlyFans and things like it inherently mess up the incentive structure and social structure of everyday relationships between two people in general. I mean, right now we're living in a world where our birth rates are constantly declining. Men are extremely lonely. Women are extremely lonely. I think a lot of that has to do with pornography. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a man can have a relationship with basically a sex robot online who only exists to them as some sort of sexual being. That's a problem. When you can pay for something like that, that becomes a problem to greater society. We pair bond less, people are getting married less, it's destroying the nuclear family in a way that is like very trackable. And that's a problem.
You know, I will say, I think it's interesting that every generation blames it on some sort of like sexual liberation instead of like the
Mhm.
accountability for like knowing the self and acting in accordance to like with discipline. Maybe I'm just like a little too philosophy here, but like my parents would say divorce rates of the boomers happened because of the like feminist movement of the 60s and like the free love movement of the 60s, right? And like everyone blames some sort of revolution on some sort of decline, but it's not a decline, it's a change. And because we adapt, we're adapting. I don't think it's a decline. I think it's just another cycle of history in which things aren't perfect and they never were. And there's no point in history where we could look back and think, as women, we would be doing better. This is the best time to be a woman. This is the best time to be a minority. This is the best time to be alive, even if you're a man. Like, this is the best time to be a person. You have the most choice. And that's
I'm not
what's
even
paralyzing, right?
I'm not
The
even saying that. I'm just
paralyzation
saying
is.
it is consequential.
But
It just is consequential, regardless
well,
of whether or
but
not
we
that's
don't know
positive
that.
or
We
negative.
don't know
We
that.
do.
No, in a healthy society, you could have all these things and have a completely different relationship. We're not a healthy society, and porn isn't the reason we're not healthy. It's a symptom, the way you're interacting with that porn, to have a
Sure.
bad relationship with it, just like with drugs or streaming. Like, I'm really concerned that minors are watching streamers. I'm concerned that like children are more likely to be exploited by their relationships, like with Colleen Ballinger, and that happened recently with her scandal in teenagers. I'm concerned with children having access. One of the reasons I love OF is I know you have to be 18 plus to join. The reason my Patreon is 18 plus, even though it's not adult work, is because I don't want children on my Discord. Like, I work really hard to kick minors out of my community, and I love that they are interested in learning, but it's not your time, and I'm not your content creator, right? So for content creators and streamers that explicitly exploit children and childlike audiences, I'm more concerned about them than adult women or men, you know, having adult customers who engage in their business. Like, we live in a business, like, this is economy, right? Like I'm trying to just say, like, we're trying to make money. And as long as you don't have the intention of exploiting your clientele, I think you're probably doing okay. But I can't exactly blame people also for not knowing that you don't only have to make money by exploiting people. Or did you guys hear the rumor of the girl, the Ruby Rose girl who made like allegedly 60 to 9? Okay, totally fake, right? It came out today on Adam 22. Totally a fake story for branding, made her more
Marketing.
money than she's ever made, right? Great story though. I love the sensationalism. That's like marketing. That's what people want. They want sensationalism. And by the way, I've made more super chats today than I have in like a week because everyone thought it was funny that they were being exploited. So I just made money off of this conversation.
Beautiful.
That's just like
You
the
want to
reality
be
of
exploited, gang. You could do
your
that by
audience
super
doesn't want
chatting
to
to
be
your
well,
favorite.
your audience also wants to be treated with the agency. Like, they're adults, they know what they're doing. They can give me $5 or they don't have to. That's the joy of it. They don't have to.
I think that
Well,
there's room for you,
I
like people like you, Brittany, to be like a nihilist or an absurdist, right? I think that there's definitely room for that. I think that you will continue to thrive however you want to thrive. However, there are some of us that want to mold society in a way that we think that would be helpful for.
I
next
do too, though. I want to
generations.
mold society to be healthier, not to reject things they don't have a healthy relationship with.
Healthy in your view.
Well, healthy.
If I can cut in, so I think
a moment though, because I want to tie this into the actual topic, right? Because this is an important point, and I'll let you respond first, Fairy Queen, and then you can go as you will. But Brittany's point about how, at least with OnlyFans and other such services, there is a larger gate, to protect minors from that than there is on Twitch, on YouTube, or on other streaming sites, right? And when it comes to exploiting your audience, we can all recognize that children are probably more likely to be exploitable than an adult is. We protect them for a reason. So given that I can tell you personal anecdotes of people who I know whose kids have spent thousands of dollars on gambling for games, or spent hundreds of dollars to play on a stream with their favorite streamer, right? Literally spent hundreds of dollars to be able to go on stream and play with their favorite streamer. I think that isn't that indicative of OnlyFans having more gates? Does that make sense?
No,
More
the issue is we're conflating anything where basically people are giving you money because they like you as exploitation. And that isn't exploitation, obviously, right? That's obviously not the case. What I'm talking about with exploitation is a very specific thing. So if a streamer is offering a relationship to their audience that does not exist, and that streamer is going above and beyond to make sure that the line of what their relationship with their viewer will look like is as blurry as possible, then I would be willing to say that that streamer is being exploitative. The issue for me is that in like Twitch culture, for example, I would say if that type of behavior occurs, it's very frowned upon for the most part. Any titty streamer can tell you about how much she gets shit on constantly for her type of work, even though a lot of titty streamers are decently cautious about like blocking all DMs, for example. And not all of them. Some titty streamers are kind of exploitative, and I have a problem with them too. My concern with OnlyFans is you have things like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge advertising. You have them saying, not just come watch my OnlyFans, but I'm looking for a guy to do a scene with. They actively say, I've found tons and tons of these things. So they're on dating apps to direct men to their OnlyFans, but they're promising that this guy will be different because I'll sleep with you. You're not like the rest of the guys, but then they keep asking him to pay money, and this does exist. If you go to OnlyFans advice on Reddit, every day I've had one of these debates, I just look and there's more and more girls coaching other girls about how to make these relationships as blurry as possible to rake in as much money as possible, which is exploitative in nature, right? So when we're talking about the consumer, we need to be really clear about what exploitation is. Paying somebody you find entertaining isn't exploitation. However, if they're paying me and I'm like, well, man, if you just give me like $70 more, I could have like a one-on-one chat with you and like, and it would be really special and stuff. And you're lying and you're saying, we'll definitely become friends. And you're lying, that's a problem. Because a lot of people are going to want to point at Brittany and be like, she offers one-on-one chats. Brittany is so explicit about her boundaries of the relationship. She doesn't give them any question about where the relationship begins and ends when she takes their money, which means she's not exploiting them, right? And so this is what we need to talk about, is when you're intentionally beguiling people to get in as much money as possible on the promise of an intimacy that you never intended to give them.
So first things first, I'm sorry, Fairy Queen, 500 bits from Parallax to say you and Kyla can exploit me. Read it out loud. Fairy Queen, go.
Okay, so I want to respond to what Lav said, to what Brittany said, to what you said, and then to what Erudite said. So I'm sorry, I'm going to be all over the place. But Lav is both right and wrong at the same time. So it is correct, in my opinion, to assume that when you are clicking on a porn subscription, I haven't quite worked through whether or not, because you're paying for it, if that's really consent. And I haven't worked through that because of the fact we can think of other services where you can ostensibly pay for it. But I do accept that specifically with sex work, that is uniquely more exploitative, typically speaking, than other types of work and other types of labor. And usually it targets vulnerable populations. And the piece of it that isn't true, but still will help both her and our side, I guess, which is the part I'm coming towards, is the part about addiction. We need to stop saying addiction when we're talking about pornography. And this is why. Not only is it not a diagnosis in the DSM, there is something called compulsion. It is called a compulsion according to the World Health Organization, okay? But when we're talking about compulsions, a compulsion is referring to things like obsessive compulsive disorder, to binge eating disorder. It's referring to other types of problems. It's not referring to alcohol withdrawals, to heroin addictions. It is not the same type of thing. And secondly, the reason why it's important to say that is because typically speaking, when men commit acts of violence and assault women, it is very common that they will use the excuse that they had a sex addiction as the reason why they did it. So a classic example of this would be Harvey Weinstein. When he was arrested, he said that he needed to go to rehab for sex addiction. When Ariel Castro was found with teenagers in his basement who he locked and assaulted, he said that he had a problem with sex addiction. There was another case of an armed gunman who broke into a bar and killed 8 people, and he said that he was struggling with pornography and with sex addiction. We had so many cases of men who say, do not take responsibility for their actions and instead say that the reason why they assault and hurt women is because they are struggling with a sex addiction. A good example, if you want to see, check it out, it's on YouTube. Ted Bundy, his last interview before he was executed, he had an interview with James Dobson, who was a pastor who argued that pornography was evil. He was a very religious man. Throughout the entire time, Ted Bundy, instead of taking responsibility for killing and murdering those women in Colorado, instead lied and said that he had a perfectly normal childhood and that he was exposed to pornography at a wrong time. And that was the reason why he attacked and killed those women. So it is very important for us to strike back at the narrative.
Can I pause you? I just need to make a clarifying question, just because I know you want to say like a whole lot, but I feel like if we're going to list like 18 things, then this panel is just going to turn into monologues. I want to make sure I'm understanding you. Are you saying that porn addiction is not true? It's not real?
I'm saying that at best it's a compulsion, at least according to the data that I've seen. So I've seen like something according to the World Health Organization, it is considered to be a disorder underneath the ISCDF. I can't pronounce, don't remember what the acronym is, but it's a compulsion. It's not an addiction, at least according to what I've seen. And most of the data that I've seen refer to it as an addiction.
Okay,
it doesn't say
what do you think behavioral addictions are?
I'm not sure what behavioral addictions are. All I can tell you is what the DSM says.
Is gambling an addiction to you? Do you think gambling is an addiction?
I don't think it matters if gambling is an addiction to me. What matters is if you can be diagnosed with it.
You can say this. I'm going to re-ask you the question. Okay. Is gambling an addiction?
I'm going to answer like it depends on like what the professionals say. Is it in the
DSM? Then yes. Yeah, most professionals consider it addiction. I want to know if you consider it an addiction.
I think that's an absurd question to ask. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what the professionals say.
Okay. Well, I'm talking to you, so I want to know what you think about it. And if you want to defer to the professionals, that's fine. I just want to hear you say.
I defer to what the APA says.
Great. Okay. So the question is, in gambling, there's no physiological withdrawal. So how is it an addiction?
I don't know. That's a question for the APA. That's not a question for me.
No, it's a question for you because you're saying that because pornography addiction is just based on compulsion, it's not an addiction. You're dubious about that. But when it comes to most behavioral addictions, they're compulsive in nature, right?
Yes.
That's one of the most important elements to an addiction, it seems.
The World Health Organization, it did not state it as an addiction. That's what the professionals have stated. And whether or not I think it's an addiction, I'm not in a position to know that because I'm not a counselor. I don't know. All I can tell you.
Do you think that there's mixed data on this? Do you think some professionals might argue that it is an addiction, that there's sex addictions and stuff like that?
I would agree that there are some. However, they haven't made it into the DSM and they haven't been accepted for years. And I would also believe that
many addictions are accepted for years. If you look at the DSM, you typically have behavioral specifiers that you can add to this thing. So I'm going to explain something to you now super calmly, if you can let me. So it's really important to understand that tegmental activation is important for any sort of compulsive type behavior. So tegmental activation occurs in OCD, and it also occurs in all forms of addiction, which means that all forms of addiction, substance and behavioral, have a compulsive element to it. This is why when like addicts say something, for example, like I couldn't not use, it's not impulsive, it's compulsive. It's like an itch they can't not scratch, right? And it seems to be the case that there's tegmental activation with things like porn and sex addiction, gambling addiction as well, because for us to understand how behaviors can be addicting, it can't just be based off of physiological withdrawal. And the compulsive model is one of the most dominant leading models because it has neuroscientific evidence for it. So just to be clear, I really don't want like people walking away with this thinking porn addiction isn't real. It seems like it is, but it's not.
Do we need to like ruminate on the porn addiction aspect to like, I guess for Fairy to make the point that it could be a thing, an excuse that people use to, have abusive behaviors?
Do sometimes people use mental illness to excuse their crimes? Yes, all the time.
Yeah,
but you can still hold them accountable, right?
Right.
I want to try my best.
Doesn't exist though, right?
Okay. I want to try my best. I want to try my best to wrangle this, reach it way back and pull us back, right, to talk about streaming, OnlyFans, and exploitation. So regardless of whether or not, right, because even in this, right, sex addiction, whether you believe it or not, gambling addiction, whether you believe it or not, streaming and OnlyFans both try to engage people to compulsively, right, check out your content compulsively, right? Streaming services do this all the time. Like we can look at Kick, for example. Kick allows gambling streams. Do we consider a gambling stream to be exploitative?
Okay,
Would you
just because
consider that to be-
addiction is compulsive in nature, it doesn't mean that people trying to hijack addiction centers are like the behavior itself is inherently compulsive. So I don't want to I just want to be really clear about this language because we're now using like clinical words. Compulsive is a very specific thing, right? Watching gambling streams isn't about compulsivity, but gambling addictions is about compulsivity. Gambling addiction, when they're doing gambling streamers, they're just trying to like be entertaining and be like as attention grabbing as possible.
Okay, so I need to cut in on this because, this is on the APA's website. It was published in 2014. It references a very specific study that was done specifically with brain science, specifically related to pornography addiction. And what this person did, and I will read out exactly who this person is. This is Nicole Prowse, PhD researcher at the Department of Psychiatry at the University of South California, Los Angeles, and colleagues studied brain responses in people who have trouble regulating their porn consumption. What they wanted to find is if their brains reacted to pornographic stimulus in the same way as looking at beer, in the same way as looking at heroin or any other form of addiction. And what they found was when they reviewed those brain scans, our findings do not make them look like addicts. This is on the APA's website. It's on 2014. The title of the article is Pornography Addictive. It was published by Kristen Weir in April 2014, volume 45, number 4.
I believe you that it's real. The question is, can you just clarify the methodology? Because I don't have that study in front of me. Were the people that were looking at the porn only addicted to porn, or were they also addicted to beer and to heroin and stuff? Did they have like comorbid addiction disorders?
Okay, let me find it.
That's going to be super important, right? If I look at heroin, I'm not going to be like, oh no, my addiction centers are firing. That's not how this works. So I just want to
I think it's interesting that we're always referencing like really sick people. Can we so my brain, when I'm problem solving, I start with the healthiest group and see how many people we can get to be healthy, not the sickest group to see how many people we can avoid making more sick, even though it's the same thing. It's just you're starting with the negative. So we're starting with addiction and the worst kind, and we're starting with the worst people, but we're also not taking into consideration that a lot of the people on OF are taught to do business this way by the same people that sell you products at Walmart. They're taught to do business this way by the same people that sell you video games. They're taught to do business this way. One of the reasons I always argue that I'm a middle class YouTuber and OnlyFans girl is because I don't do those things, but I always refer to my paycheck as total proof that I'm not doing it, right? But I can't do it in good conscience. And I wear my wedding ring in my stuff, and I don't change my lifestyle, and I make it really clear. And I have, by the way, gone on a date with somebody in my OnlyFans audience because he asked me out and we had stuff in common, so why not? But it wasn't a match, right? I'm not opposed to you dating a sex worker. Sex workers need love too. I'm not opposed to you finding relationships. I don't like lying to my clients or my customers or my callers or I don't want to lie. But the dilemma is that the parasocial relationship sometimes appears like an unintentional lie to the people receiving the information and vice versa back to the content creator, right? Even amongst us as streamers, do we not misunderstand each other? Do we not misunderstand our relationships, our closeness? You think that's not going to happen with the audience? We can't even do it amongst ourselves. So again, I want to start with a healthier perspective, a hope to change society to be better, not to settle that society will never get there, right? And I feel like you guys are all not you guys are all, but I feel like there's a little bit of defeatist energy in the room.
Well, I wanted to respond to what you said, Brittany, and unfortunately I wasn't able to respond to what everyone was saying. But Brittany, first of all, this is something that I struggle with too. When we're talking about pornography, is that I do think that there should be beautiful depictions of what sexuality should look like. And I think that there is a poverty of that in the world that we live in. So this is one of the things and reasons why I'm not certain of my position is a world in which there is no sexualized image is a world without the movie Lady Chatterley's Lover. It's a world without some of the greatest works of art that have ever been created. And so I do think that there is something to be said for that. However, when I also think that there's something real concern about how can I possibly know for sure, which is the reason why I'm in the position that I'm in. Now, to answer the question, there was a point that was brought up by Erudite before, which has to do with the subreddit. I spoke with a sex worker, and I've been interviewing sex workers behind the scenes. Hopefully I'll be able to have more of those interviews published later on. And this is something that she told me. Yes, it is true. In order to be successful at OnlyFans, you have to promote your stuff. And you do promote it on other sites other than just OnlyFans. That's the way that you make money, at least according to what she told me. Those of you who have had OnlyFans, you can confirm or you can deny. That's at least what she told me. But what she told me was that one problem that a lot of OnlyFans girls have, particularly girls that are 18 years years old, one of the places that they go to promote their content is on the Barely Legal subreddit. They specifically go to subreddits that to attract a certain male clientele. And so to hear, like, yes, it may be the case that like they are going to these subreddits to promote them, but I have a hard time feeling sorry for the 55-plus-year-old man who goes to the Barely Legal subreddit to click on the picture of the barely 18-year-old girl and then feels exploited by her because she doesn't want to meet up in public. Which, by the way, as far as the girlfriend experience goes, right, and them selling that, there's a pretty damn good reason why you don't meet your clients out in public. And part of the reason for that is that prostitutes and sex workers, when they meet their clients in public, are at high risk of being assaulted and murdered, which is the reason why they don't do that and the reason why they keep their information to themselves.
I would also like to just say that in terms of service, like on, say, someone like someplace like MFC or on OnlyFans, it's actually against rules and the words are blurred. You can't like say meet up and stuff like that in the DMs. It literally won't let you send that. There are already things in place. It is against the rules to do so. So I just wanted
that's so OnlyFans can be sued if a model does.
Yeah,
exactly.
I guess
It is. It's a liability.
Yeah.
when you say that you don't feel bad for the guy who is going to Barely Legal, do you think that people who, like, I guess me and Lav are saying that we do?
No, I don't think that Lav is saying
Okay.
that. I think
Do you
Lav
think I'm
is.
saying that?
I don't think that you mean to say that. I don't think that's your
Okay.
intent.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
that
that's explicitly and wholly not what I am saying, right? I don't have a problem with women promoting themselves. I understand, to be honest, probably every OnlyFans model would love it if there was like more easy ways to promote their stuff that was more ethical rather than anything. That's not the problem. I am explicitly concerned with people who are not unintentionally even, intentionally being deceptive about the nature of the relationship to get as much money from these people as possible. I've also spoken to OnlyFans models, and there are some OnlyFans models who are amazing. I don't have a problem with this. There are other OnlyFans models who have told me explicitly that they do try to like be super cagey. They do lie about having a boyfriend, right? When there are like people message them saying like, hey, I was in a Matic episode and I sent you 30 grand. Can I have it back? They're like, oh, fuck no, that's your problem, right? This also exists. And my concern specifically in the difference between OnlyFans and something like streaming is that I only care when abuse occurs. It doesn't seem like a really huge problem with streamers taking advantage of their viewers. Typically when it occurs, it gets called out ruthlessly. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm saying I don't think that there's a culture within like Twitch, for example, being like, yes, you should try to like be deceitful to get as much money as you can. I actually feel like there's the opposite culture.
I agree
My
with
concern
Kyla.
is the deceit.
I agree with Kyla. I just need to say this as a sex worker perspective from a different perspective. I agree with you, Kyla, because I'm obviously very concerned with this, right? I want the healthiest outcome. One of the dilemmas I find that when I'm in my sex worker friend groups and we're talking is the big moral dilemma we're in is the client wants a relationship in which they almost feel like they're getting taken advantage of. Like I know a pay pig who's really well known in the YouTube space, and it's like really interesting because like obviously like I want, you know, it's his relationship, he's very successful, all these things, but it's one of those things where like I'm not here to judge him. He spends thousands of, but he's very like he has a job, he works, what is, you know, but that's his kink, and it's not my job to say that he's being taken advantage of. But the role of the sex worker and the client is to sort of blur those lines, and I think there's a way to do it ethically, but you have to be very self-aware. And so I agree with Kyla. Yeah, I agree with Kyla's intent here.
Go ahead, finish up, but then I have to interject.
Yeah. So my concern is that this actually, sex work needs a lot of nuance to get the right formula and the right energy exchange between the client and the customer. Like the customer and the provider. Like a really, really, this is why it's an adult activity. It needs really mature people involved. You know, in an ideal world, those women would refund them, right? But also, I know streamers have this problem really fast where people will pay them and then take the money back as like a prank. And at that point, I'm keeping your money. So, you know.
But on OnlyFans, you can do chargebacks as a purchaser.
Yes, you can. And by the way, I do report people who come to my OnlyFans for only a day and leave again and do a chargeback because I know for a fact that's them trying to get content for free.
Yep.
So I do report you.
Yep.
Because no ma'am.
Noted. Yeah, just real quick, like this idea, right, that streaming is less exploited, or there's less of a problem with exploitation in general streaming because people call it out all the time. OnlyFans, as I understand it, and again, I'm not an expert, at least in the streaming space, we're always in each other's business. We're collaborating all the time. We're like, this space is the content in a lot of ways, where we interact in a way that OnlyFans models do not interact and collab together in the same level, right? So of course there's going to be more calling ruthlessly out of it when it comes to the streaming space than there would be in the OnlyFans space. OnlyFans aren't in the habit of making content based on other OnlyFans content, right? That's not the habit here. However, in the streaming space, at least when I exist in, React streaming is the thing. It's the meta. It's obviously going to be called out much more in this space, not because of there's different levels of exploitation, but because that's just how the space works. So my argument here and my concern here is I can give you instances where people have explicitly lied to their audience, saying, hey, we can have a better relationship. You can be part of my community. You can be great and ingratiated. You can play games with me. I will be your friend. But it is, by its very nature, not true. It's false. But it's more insidious because it's harder to see, right? And more people it's just more people just shrug their shoulders at it than the OnlyFans thing. We only get outrage when the sex
Here's the
workers
thing.
do it.
Yeah, I actually think the call out nature is probably worse because I think it creates incentive structures where we have like content creators literally parasitically trying to like tear each other down just for content. And I don't want sex workers to have to like deal with everything else that they do and then also be like backstabbing each other. That's not what I want. But for example, if you offer a girlfriend experience, be about it. That's it. If you offer a FinDom experience, just be explicit about that. I have no problem negotiating with your clients anything that you would like to do for the most part. Like for the most part, obviously. That's not the problem. The problem is lack of disclaimers and intentionally, deceitfully trying to offer a girlfriend experience, but not tell them that that's what it is and making it seem like, you know, maybe we'll meet up, maybe we'll have sex sometime, maybe you're special. That is exclusively and only my problem. And I would like to see, for example, OnlyFans saying you must disclaim the nature of like what your clientele relationship will be with your client.
If I can add to this, I think that is certainly... I think that we're trying to be like a very... I think that there is a reality also to acknowledge that even if you are doing everything you can, I still think that there's a level of exploitation because you are keeping someone from having those real relationships in real life with a real woman.
Disagree.
So,
well, I disagree. I think like there was a stat that said like 80-something% of people who consume OnlyFans are in relationships.
It makes sense that you guys would disagree because that's basically what the panel is about. But I think that I think ultimately, when we want to live in a more healthy society, we talk about pair bonding, we talk about marriage, we talk about children with two parents in the home. That is not happening right now. For whatever inexplicable reason, you don't have to blame it on porn, you don't have to blame it on OnlyFans. Obviously, it's a symptom of a bigger problem, but it's a symptom that's become very pervasive in our society and our cultural makeup. It's very big in the zeitgeist right now, right? So I think that that's a problem when there's a lot of men who, especially after COVID, especially after having to stay at home, are like, you know what, I actually can just watch porn. I actually can just have a relationship with this person. And there's no incentive structure to go out, to go date, to wash yourself, to make any money, to do all these things because you can have someone who doesn't really care about any of those things living in your screen.
Well, maybe it's just evolution.
I think that's
maybe they're going to
exploitative,
experiment to continue.
It's consequential, even if you don't call it just, even if the two people don't realize the exploitation going on.
Okay, I just need to say this. Since the beginning of time, sex work being the oldest age, like the oldest job in the book, okay? Women and sex workers have been exploited. I don't know why we're turning it around now as if they've been the abusers this whole time. OnlyFans is a new version of it in which they are still being exploited.
You're taking it personally. I've never said that.
I didn't take it personally.
Well, I think that I think that you've gotten a lot of personal feedback on this. You have.
No.
I know that you got it.
No.
I'd never said anything like that. In fact, I am way more on the side of the sex worker. That's what my whole fucking platform is about.
No,
But
I'm
when we're
saying the
talking about
argument.
exploitation-
I'm saying the title of the stream, girl. Like, I'm not taking it personal. I'm talking about the title of the stream.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think anyone's doing that here.
Well, I'm bringing it up in the conversation for the discussion.
Okay.
I'm not saying anyone's doing it. I'm adding to the discussion.
Okay, when you said we, I just assumed that
Like
we were in the same
we. Okay, what I'm trying to say is like there's this narrative that happens around this subject matter in which all of a sudden these women are exploiting these victims that have been men, let's say, we'll gender it for the sake of this conversation. But over time, It has always been the reverse, and I don't want this narrative to spin what's statistically been happening to sex workers over time, as if they have not been exploited and finally found a niche in order to take power back and to do it in a safety way. And obviously, I agree with Kyla. I want everyone to be safe through the process, but we also have to understand that we are a reflection of society. So these sex workers have been taught this way, to be this way, probably by men who have taught them this is how you take advantage of men, like Andrew Tate, who used to fill out the he also used to send messages on behalf of his sex workers, right? So like even Andrew Tate is a promoter of this model. So it's not with men or women or OnlyFans models or not. It's with the groups of people who think this is still ethical. They need to be tackled. And everyone who's not doing that doesn't need to be lumped into that. And so again, I want to target the actual source of the issue and rework it so they don't get promoted to the top. Though if you live in a capitalistic world like we do, the top is who makes the most money.
Yep.
And frankly, they are going to win that game every time if that's the game we're playing.
If I want to cut in, like, and I genuinely don't know, everything that I can tell you about OnlyFans is based off of what my friends have told me and based off of like the data like that I have looked at. So I am very concerned as to how safe OnlyFans actually is. I understand it's empowering because the sex worker has their own platform, because there's a paywall, because they are in control as opposed to working for an industry. But there are some unique challenges that come with that. And one of them is like this is something I read in a study, it's called the gigification of work, right? One thing I've wondered, and this is a genuine question, are there unions? Can you unionize as an OnlyFans worker? Is there a sex worker union that you can join?
Okay, I'm from America. You think we focus on unions? Like, I don't know, girl. Like, is this really that important? I'm an independent.
That's sort of what America is.
But like, I'm not
Yes, it
focused
is.
on unions. I just feel like this is a weird conversation to have around people that want to be super
No,
independent.
it does matter. It does matter. And there are unions. That's not true. There are sex worker unions. And
No,
what
that's
happens
fine.
is
But
the
like,
unions-
you're insinuating as if this would make it better for everyone, and this is not what every sex worker wants. I just want the amount of freedom to go around, just like being a YouTuber, guys. My OnlyFans feels
Listen,
just like
I-
streaming
I-
to me, right?
I work as a teacher. Not every teacher wants to be a part of the
Of course,
teachers
right.
union.
But I'm saying, like, do
That's
streamers need a union if OnlyFans models do? Like, what are we doing here?
I'm saying that, like, even if you individually as a worker do not want to be a part of the union, it is still good for your benefit that a union exists. So that when your stuff gets leaked, so that when something happens to you, you have a group of people who can legally lobby for you and can
Okay,
sue people on
so
your behalf.
first
That's
of
why it
all,
matters.
again,
There are sex
this is
worker
very
unions.
important, and I don't know how to tell you this. Leaks are kind of great for business. Like, okay, they're not, if you are an OnlyFans model, my leaks bring in more business, obviously. It's not ideal, but it's also the reason you get more business because people go to leak websites that are made for OnlyFans models specifically to look at their work and then they want more. But if you want, OnlyFans does allow you to reach out to their, like, help their people, and they'll allegedly help on your behalf. So again, depending on how you're running your business, you think about leaks of a normal job, like your OnlyFans is meant to be seen and consumed. That's why these girls go on Fresh and Fit and whatever podcast, right? Even though they're being degraded, they're also being paid so much more by going on. Because even though it's the exchange you make for the industry you're in, just like streaming, you lose sleep, you stream at all times, you have to be on
You
camera. There's
degrade yourself.
in ways you really do. Like, I don't know why we're pretending
do.
like as streamers,
things
our
that
life
feel
isn't
like
under fire, our
environmentalists
personal
do.
choices aren't under fire, our mental health is under fire. Where people make videos about us, you know what I mean? Telling us about our mental health,
Yeah,
myself
5-hour-long
included.
videos about us.
Laura,
Yeah, like we all do that. We
I
all
had,
do
like,
it.
My content ripped and leaked in like customs that were very specific and maybe a little weird and embarrassing. And then the person who pays me for that custom then puts it on a website. And I'm not going to list what websites, but it's a branded one that you know of without my consent. And it was incredibly humiliating and degrading.
see
and
that.
I am not of
A picture of me from when I was 18 is on Pornhub as an ad.
Okay, I can see the issues with that. There are, like, you can advocate for people to, like, represent you in a better way. I kind of take the opinion of, like, if you put your nudes on the internet, get ready for everybody to see them. If you send a nude on a cell phone, get ready. Like, that's kind of my philosophy. That's how I'm going to raise my kids, right? But I get
may
it.
be true. That is true. That may be
And we-
true, but there are many cases of like where other sex workers have needed unions. An example of this was the Deliveroo scandal in the
That's
UK,
great, but what does that
when
have to do with today's topic? Unions?
It has to do with the fact that it's exploitative to the workers.
Yes, but does
And-
streamers need unions? Like, we're doing this OnlyFans
It'd be
versus
cool if we
streaming.
had one.
I actually, you know what? I will be very honest with you. Like this is like non-tangential. I actually think that for certain demographics of streamers and certain demographics of people that want to be on this platform, it would be nice if there was a group of people that banded together and said that they were tired of the way that they were being treated on this platform. And even if they didn't agree with everything that happened to them, they decided that they would stick together and they would band together.
We need
And that's
Twitch
why
Volturi.
and we can talk about this some other time, but that's a part of what I believe in, and it's what I am trying to do. So, yes, I do think that unions are important. I do think banding together is important if you're all facing a similar issue. I believe, and I know this may be a difference, but I think that even though you do have individual responsibility, I think that if you can do something to help the other people who are in your community, that you should. And you should give a damn about what happens to them. And
Yeah,
yes,
I agree
do
with
think
you.
that
You're just
unions are important.
moralizing it. Like you're putting yourself on a pedestal of like you care more, but we care in different ways, right? It's not about caring more. We all care. None of us are sociopaths. We're all, well, that's
Okay,
rude.
and
Antisocial
let me ask
personality
you a
disorder is
question.
real.
And this is really this is a
But, like-
question directed at you and at Kyla, and this has to do with the question of the disclaimer on the website. Okay, so let's suppose, for instance, that you do find an OnlyFans creator, and she does sell the girlfriend experience, and it is blurry. What should happen to that person?
What do you mean?
I mean, like what? I mean, okay, she's exploiting her workers. What should happen? Should she go to jail? Should she have a fine? Should she be kicked off the platform?
No,
What
I
should
just
happen?
think this is
Hung.
I don't
Sanctions
believe in
happen.
legal repercussions. Like I really don't believe like outside of like if you want to move society in that direction, I just think ultimately people have different
Okay.
values and I would
Let me
recommend
explain why I'm asking, okay?
Okay.
Because the corollary to the OnlyFans creator who is selling an experience they can't possibly provide is not a drug dealer. It's not somebody selling alcohol. It's a fortune teller. We have had so many examples of people who claim that
Fortune
they
teller,
can
what? So can
I'm
I
gonna
just get some
explain.
clarity? Hold on, stop. Can I get some clarity on the question then? Because obviously I didn't understand it. So is your question someone who is saying, "Hey, you can be my boyfriend if you pay me X amount of money," but then it turns out that that's not true, that they lied, that it was a form of fraud. You are considering that a form of fortune telling?
I'm going to explain why, but yes, the question I'm asking is what should happen to that person. Brittany is saying that
Fraud,
nothing should
isn't
happen. Brittany is saying that there should be no legal sanctions upon that person if they do that. There should not be there should be no legal consequences to that person if they do that, right? I don't know what Erudite says because Kyla isn't here. But this is why that matters, okay? The corollary to this, the corollary to selling a relationship, to selling an experience that is fraudulent and you can't possibly provide for absurd amounts of money from a vulnerable population is, I'm sorry, it's people who say that they can speak to your dead relatives and promise you that you can connect
so like
with them.
again, people are allowed to have like spiritual beliefs and believe in fortune tellers or whatever they want to believe in. You're allowed to believe the sex worker is your girlfriend. The dilemma I'm having is that no matter whose side of the argument you're on, you would need a whole court and a jury to decide if the customer themselves was manipulating the sex worker to convince them they were in a relationship, or if the sex worker was convincing them they were in a relationship, because sex workers do date people. And so again, you would have to literally have a jury that has the nuance to understand the differences.
Exactly. And that's my point. And that's my point. And that's my point. That's the point that I'm trying to get across with the fortune telling. There are laws that exist that prohibit you from fortune telling. In Canada, where Kyla is, if you are caught for fraudulently fortune telling, for selling dead relative stuff and saying that you could possibly provide this experience, you're fined $5,000. There are legal sanctions that can be put upon you.
Yeah, so I'm pretty like
you can be sued for it. So if you really think that it is exploitative, if you really think there should be that disclaimer, then you should also agree that there should be legal sanctions on that person.
Well,
and
no,
the
I'm
fact
not.
that we don't think that indicates that we don't really think that it's as exploitative. Because
No,
if you did, you would be saying that there should be legal sanctions.
No, because
and they're
as a
not.
sex worker, I know when the government gets involved, they make shitty decisions on your behalf. Like, I don't trust people to come in who don't care about sex workers or have the nuance.
Fortune teller in Louisiana, like in front of New Orleans, is any different?
People are allowed to be fortune tellers. I don't know what
Wait.
world you live in, but I just like.
Hold on, please.
I live in a world where
This is blowing my mind here. Who thinks, right? If someone commits fraud, I don't care about the fortune teller shit. This is fraud. If you offer a product and the person does not get that product, right? That's fraud. Am I off base here?
No,
that
I
not
agree that
true?
fraud is wrong. But again, with
Okay.
sex work, the nuance has to be there, Wick, because customers want the girlfriend experience. They want to be convinced beyond a shadow of doubt that you're dating them, even if you even aren't. That's why, like, you have to have consent negotiations. It's
They
why,
should just
like,
get a girlfriend then.
yes,
They
but
should
the
just get
problem
real
is like
girlfriends.
not everybody wants the commitment of a girlfriend, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Some people just have lovers. Some people just have sex workers. Some people have. That's what's so cool about the world is like if you're really nuanced and adult enough and mature enough, you can have a very unique lived experience for the short time you're on Earth. But if you start freaking out and everyone does things out of fear, then we're not going to get there. And morals differ from person to person. Everyone has different morals, and so you have to engage with people that share your values and morals, so you both know what you're consenting to.
Sure, but there needs to be generalities because that's how laws exist.
Well,
That's how
but
we
gener-
make
right, but, like,
legislation.
are
If
we
I
on a
say,
panel to
"I don't
argue
think murder's
laws?"
that bad. I don't really. I think that's definitely a part of it. If we're talking about exploitation, we're going to talk about the consequences of it, right?
Okay, so I think that I'm gonna be real. I think this is like I feel like this is the part of the performity as like streamers that I think is a kind of a joke. Like none of us are in law. None of us are fucking
Wait.
act like we're not doing these
Yeah,
things.
you always,
No, but
Brittany,
we
you
can
always, you always go to
No, no,
this place of like
because
nothing
listen,
matters. Why
listen,
am I here?
because it starts
You
with the
don't have to be
morals. It
here.
starts with how you see each other. I see human beings as complex creatures who don't even know what they want half the time. So in order to get people what they want, they first have to know themselves. And then the law should follow the healthy version of the human, not the sickest part of the like society, right? So we wouldn't like like laws made out of fear are a mistake. And so again, it's like we need these things because I'm afraid.
Not
I'm afraid.
necessarily.
Well, but in
I'm-
these
I'm
circumstances,
sorry,
it sounds
but
like it's going
I
to cause a lot more
understand,
harm
Rose,
than good.
I understand and I agree that laws should exist for the benefit of humanity, but also they are based off of definitions like exploitation, right?
Yes.
So if you think so, and this is and I don't think you're necessarily, it sounds like you're changing your position maybe a little bit, but if Kyla is saying, if she is saying that this is highly exploitative for the content creator to be selling this experience, to be committing fraud basically with all of these users, then that means, legally speaking, if we're comparing it to other examples of people that do this, that she should say that there should be legal sanctions. And yet the fact of the matter is that isn't what's happening. And
But there should be. So I'll give you an example. When that Slicker guy, I think that was his name, Slicker guy,
What?
basically stole $30,000 from people, right? I think there should have been legal consequences for that. If you commit fraud, if you exploit someone in a fraudulent way, yes, I think there should be legal consequences to that. Depending in what that consequences would depend on the exploitation that you did, how much of the exploitation that you did. But yes, streamers or OnlyFans models alike, if you are committing fraud, then you should be held to account legally in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. Do we disagree?
It depends on the fraud. I think we're defining fraud differently. I just think there's not enough nuance in the conversation.
I was going to suggest before I walked away. I think part of the issue that's happening in this conversation is maybe I'm dumb, but I'm having a hard time. It feels like we're jumping from talking about women being exploited to men being exploited and like consumer versus client. And it's kind of all over the map. And I think it would be really helpful if we focused on one of them and like disentangle that. The problem is all of them are really important conversations, obviously. It's just hard to fit all of that into like 2 hours. So I'm not sure, like obviously whatever, but it feels like if we just narrowed in on one topic and stayed there, it would be easier to define terms and just like page.
No, I absolutely agree. It's just everyone wants to be talking about different things today, and so I'm trying to figure out what you all want to talk about, and then we will
I
absolutely.
think we all
talk about
agreed,
that.
at least the four of us who are debating agreed to talk about like being exploitative to the client, like the client being exploited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Okay. Given that that's the case, right? Like, I guess to reset a little bit. I don't know exactly what, for those of you who think OnlyFans is uniquely exploitative, what changes would you like to see to the system? What regulations would you like to see put in place to counteract this? What would you like to see changed on a systemic level to make this less the case, that it was less exploitative?
I think every OnlyFans girl should be hung in town square.
And tarred.
Yeah,
Hung and tarred.
feathered.
Would there be charged
Yeah.
watch? Would we
Why?
have
We
paid
can't
watch?
charged
let
for
them get
being-
away with it.
yeah.
We can't let them get away with it.
With the pillar. For a serious answer, okay, I'm really big on disclaimers. I think it needs to be made a culture within OnlyFans that you're very explicit with your clients about the nature of your relationship. Very explicit. If you offer a girlfriend experience, that's fine, but you need to tell them what that looks like, what the beginning and ends of that. It's both safer for you, to be honest, so that there's like no like weird expectations from the client who's probably going to be increasingly expecting things from you, but also it protects the client to like make it clear like this is just a fantasy. It isn't going beyond that. My job to you is providing the fantasy, and that's where it ends, right?
If I
And
may,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
I think that really, and this is pretty extreme, and people might get mad at me for this. I think that there should not be an inbox option on OnlyFans. I think that if you are going to talk, it needs to be public. It needs to be with the community, and there should not be an option to personally message your clients. I think that
I'd
that's
love that.
inappropriate.
I would
Well,
love
The
that.
tough
I
thing with
hated
that
one.
is like, where do the kind of like the certain kinks that probably aren't best suited to a public setting, where do they occur, I guess?
You can do, I mean, you can do anonymous. You could still like, I don't think like messaging, right, should be allowed. But if you still, I mean, obviously you don't put your full name on OnlyFans. So even if you comment under an OnlyFans girl's picture, it's like a random name, and you can still ask for like, you could be like, oh, I'm taking commissions tonight. If you want something, message me how much you'd be willing to pay for it, this, and then you could just put like under that. So then it also keeps everyone kind of accountable also. It makes it so you don't want to ask for any like crazy wicked shit.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanna
Quick one.
I want to ask a question to Brittany, to Lav, and to Rora, okay? Because I believe all of you have worked on OnlyFans at one point. Yes, that's true? For everyone here?
Big
Okay.
OnlyFans girl, yeah.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Did you ever have any men who became obsessed with you and who wanted to meet up with you? And was that because you promised them a girlfriend experience, or did they react this way to messages that you send everyone? Just curious.
I have never ever enabled any kind of OnlyFans or GF experience. I have been very explicit with my boundaries, and I found that the people who tended to push my boundaries the most were people who were a bit more aggressive, and I was very clear on it. It's almost like as if the ones I set the boundaries with the most, they were like, how can I push these rules? So that's my personal experience, though, and I am definitely on the line of like I've never offered any kind of weird blurry lines. I've been very clear, and I have most definitely had my boundaries pushed.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I act like the inbox portion of the website doesn't exist. I never message them back. I don't like their comments about me, or I didn't like their comments about me. I just don't even. I pretend like they're not there. I just collect money, Monopoly, pass, go.
For me, it's a little different, actually. I have the best audience on OF. Thank you so much, guys. The best. They're very respectful. They send me very nice messages. I actually have only had bad experiences with streaming. I have had countless people at cons, countless people at events, countless people in my DMs, countless people at meetups try to kiss me, try to touch me, try to date me. I'm like, what are we doing, sir? And it's just like it's a miscommunication, because as a streamer, they feel closer to me because I'm like a normie with a small audience. But same thing with OF. It's like OF is a paid service. I am doing this. Like I said, I wear my wedding ring. I even I make it very explicitly clear why I'm there. Now, to be fair, I'm also a kinkster and I'm also a nudist. So to be fair, my work is predicated around nude culture, which means my audience is really sex positive, which means I am catering to a much healthier audience than the men who are grotesque. And I do block those men pretty easily because I'm just like all about creating a vibe, right? And I also do that on YouTube. Like the money isn't the priority, but if the money is your priority, then you're gonna play dirty because that's how it works in the industry. And so again, Kyla, give me a religious quote about worshiping money. You know what I mean? Like when you worship money,
You cannot serve two masters. You either cling to one.
There we
you can't
go.
serve mammon and
So I feel like that's a big part of it.
Good
And
little boy Wick.
yeah, I just think again, I want to give agency to adults, especially in an 18+ arena. And then this is a new thing, and I want us to learn how to make it better, not be worried that it's not working. Nothing ever works when it first starts.
And I would say,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say, I wholly agree, because I feel like whenever I give this position, I feel like people start conflating this to be like, you just want to get rid of OnlyFans content creators. You just think they're all whores. So it's like, none of this is true. I am fine with OnlyFans content creators having power. I have a problem when abuse occurs, and I want systems in place that we can prevent abuse from occurring as much as possible. And if there's a culture that's emerged on a platform that is pro being abusive, I want to see that culture dismantled a little bit. And I would argue on OnlyFans, there is absolutely a space within it that is pro being somewhat abusive towards your clients. And I don't want to see that. Just like I don't want to see OnlyFans content creators getting like abused and stalked. Like I have no problem with them having privacy and stuff. I just want a couple of, bowling lane bumpers.
I just
So
wanted to
let's
add
go-
to the end of it that I have experienced that weird attachment and the boundary pushing and the thinking more of a thing with streaming versus OnlyFans. It's happened way more when I've been streaming, and I've been very clear I'm in relationships during this time, and even had my partner on streams with me. So and it still happens. So, but again, I just don't know if that's because you're online longer and you're being exposed to more people, and that's why I do believe that in streaming it could be more prevalent or is.
Mhm. So I have a couple of questions, okay, and just a statement and then a question, right? The statement is, so here's the thing, Kyla. If you really believe that, do you think that there should be legal sanctions upon the women that advertise for the girlfriend experience and then rake in money and exploit these users for it? Do you think that there should be legal sanctions? Because that's fraud, right? Do you think so?
But when you say legal, do you mean like criminological, or do you just mean like within the policy of OnlyFans that they could be like banned from OnlyFans?
I mean, they can be sued and they can receive a $5,000 fine.
I mean, if you can establish that fraud has happened, sure. I mean, if they're doing fraud, but what I really want is OnlyFans policy to improve. I want to see like them being moderated. So if it's like being clear that that behavior is occurring or something like that, that there's like a warning and a ban, for example, for like 3 days. The way like most platforms kind of manage their community and their space.
To be very clear, I don't think that it's fraud. I think that like what Brittany said, some other sex workers have said that you know what you're signing up for when you go there. You know this is OnlyFans. You understand what the deal is, right?
That's my entire point. No, hold on. That's my entire point. With
I know,
Brittany and with Rora, you know exactly what's going on. That is not the case for all content creators, and there's absolutely a culture within an OF that is intentionally blurry about this. Intentionally, not blurring the relationship for fantasy explicitly, where they say, "I'm going to give you a girlfriend experience." They just talk to you like they might become your girlfriend because they're leaning on the blurriness. So I don't have a problem with Brittany. I don't have a problem with Rora at all. I think they're doing a great job.
Okay, but then in order for you to be consistent on that position, you should want legal sanctions upon the people, because we can find examples of other people when they perform fraudulent actions and
We should shoot them dead.
Okay.
Let me answer for Kyla. Kyla wants to kill them.
Yeah,
I'm just
I want to kill all women.
the
All of
reason I'm
them.
talking about legal sanctions is
This
merely
isn't
to point
consistent.
out
If
Okay.
it's fraud, hold on. If it's fraud, that's a
This is what you
problem.
you're saying
Right.
it's fraud. You're
You can
saying
probably
this
bring
is
him to
fraud.
small claims
Correct?
court. Sure, bring him to small claims
Sure,
court.
I guess I could go to sure. Yeah, if it's
What a
fraud,
ridiculous thing to say. Okay, hang on. I need to
everyone
put
would
this
be
point
liable
out.
for fraud. Sure.
Okay, because in Canada, if you are found fraudulently fortune telling and you try to extract money out of people for thousands of dollars, promising that you can speak to their dead relatives beyond the grave, you can be held to account for $5,000 and you can be held liable for fraud. That is a thing that
I think
happens.
that's sort of silly to do to fortune tellers also, though. I think that that's just sort of
I honestly do
silly.
too. But the point is, right? If you genuinely believe that that is the case, that is the only logical consistent decision to make. And I
Well, it
think
depends on how. Well, the issue is you're loading this, right? Like there's a loading that's happening here, which is that like I don't really know what you mean when you say fraud, because if your definition is fraud is a lot broader than mine, then for you to be consistent about fraud, maybe you have to take those claims. But if that's not the operating definition I'm working on, then I don't necessarily have to like bite any of these
then what is
things
your
for
definition
consistency.
of fraud? And do you think that they are committing fraud?
Okay,
What is your definition?
I want to
I was
get
asking
back
you
on the
about-
Can you
explicit
can you
side. I'm gonna be
imagine
real.
going to a judge and being like, my cum wasn't like good enough, and I spent $50, so I'd like that money back.
Some would.
Okay.
Some would try.
Can I chime in here? I think we're
Please.
missing a huge point that maybe is obvious to my brain, but like maybe not. But like when you say the girlfriend experience, you're establishing a business dynamic. That's what sex workers call a business dynamic. So the moment the customer comes in with the desire for a girlfriend experience, they are admitting out loud they know what they're consenting to. A fake performative relationship that's predicated on an exchange of money to give them an intimate relationship. Now, and I think Kyla probably knows a couple of these girls. There are even some girls I know where when I see them, I'm like, I can't tell if you know that this guy literally thinks he's dating you or not. And I need you to explain it to him that you're not dating him. But at the same time, I've heard from some sex workers, the client doesn't want to be told or explicitly, because again, you can't tell if sometimes it's hard to tell, is the client aware and like that doesn't need to be said, or do they need it to be sat down and explained to? Because if they're coming in with the girlfriend experience in mind, then they already know they're coming in for a business. I think it's more similar to like diet pills or like diet food, where like we know it's not like the healthiest for you, but it's like a way that we get around kind of like selling people a fantasy if you're going to get skinny eating these bars. I think there's a little bit of responsibility that has to be happen on both ends, right? I really do, and I think that's the
I
best way to
agree.
go about it, right?
Sure. So my definition of fraud when it comes to OnlyFans is explicitly this. Said it a couple of times, so I'll say it again. When the OnlyFans content creator is intentionally deceiving the client into believing that there is in fact not a business dynamic, but a real relationship beginning to occur. That is where I think there's a problem. And to be honest, I don't really care about them going to small claims court. I suppose maybe they could, but what I really care about is making sure that there is a disclaimer if there wasn't before, and making sure that content creators aren't intentionally trying to mislead about what the business dynamic could be. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not worried about this like unintentional obsessive stalker. You're not responsible if you keep on laying out your boundaries and he just won't listen to you. That's not your problem. You're literally doing everything that you can. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people doing the opposite of that.
I guess I'm still just confused on how that's unique to OnlyFans. I see this as happen all the time, and I understand it gets called out. I understand it gets called out in other spaces, but it's still happening. So recently, I think just today, in fact, Twitch changed its toss, right, about sexual content. I don't know if you read that or saw that. There's now
You can be
artistic nudity.
yeah, you can be artfully
artistic
nude.
nudity out apparently, and I have to look into it. Like, so we are going to have an explosion, right, of women engaging in artistic nudity and other things. So if we're concerned about the kind of like parasociality and the sexualized element of parasociality in OnlyFans, should we not equally be concerned about that?
No, nobody is
why
worried
not?
about. Okay, because I'm not worried about that. I said already a million times, if you are intentionally being deceitful, I have a problem with it.
Okay, but
There's
how
a
does that
really
only
big-
happen?
So
Kyla,
Kyla thinks something different than I do. I am of the position that I think that any of this work,
Okay, fair
even
enough.
sexual on Twitch, is exploitative in some nature.
That's fair enough. But my problem with your position here, Kyla, is that being intentionally deceitful to your audience happens across the spectrum. And I'm concerned, and I'm trying to understand why OnlyFans uniquely has this issue in a way that my stream or Roar stream or any other stream like on Twitch or Kick or YouTube does not. Because I can guarantee
Sure,
you
I
that
have
if
10
I wanted
minutes,
to
though.
exploit
I
my
have 10 minutes.
audience,
So I have to have like the back and forth with you if I'm going to do that. Like,
please, please.
No, I'm not trying to interrupt. I'm saying like I can try to get it through with you, but I gotta go in 10, just so you're aware of that. Okay.
Well, we can either try 10 minutes this, or we can schedule this talk one-on-one for another time. It's up to you. Your call.
Okay. So you're asking probably the most important question against my position, which is the uniqueness of the situation. Is there something unique going on with OnlyFans? And I would say it seems to be the case that there is. I'm not saying because like the mechanism of sex work is uniquely created. I'm saying something has occurred on OnlyFans specifically where there is absolutely a uniquely bad thing going on, where there are absolutely, and it's usually oftentimes content creators who are maybe not as successful, I'm not sure, but are intentionally trying to blur the lines with their purchasers so that they can get more money from them. They are knowingly trying to promise more than they will ever give. They're knowingly doing these things. This is my problem. This is what I think is exploitative. And prominence is the unique part of OnlyFans. I'm not saying that chatterbait models have never done this. I'm saying it's really unique to go to the OnlyFans.
Oh no, your mic.
Oh
I thought it was me.
no,
I thought
your
it was
mic
me.
just died. Hold on. See, this is her
Choose on a
look.
roll.
God
It's God's
smote
will.
her internet connection
It's God's
because
will.
she was.
Oh yeah, it's back. It's back.
Okay, carry on.
The thing that's unique about OnlyFans is that it just seems to be occurring in more prevalence, right? I go onto the OnlyFans recommendation Reddit page and girls are telling other girls tips about how to blur the lines. That's exclusively my problem, is the culture around it. And if there is an okayness in OnlyFans to be deceitful to your clients for money, I think that's exploitative and I want to see it change. But I don't want OnlyFans gone. I just want girls to not be dishonest about the nature of their work. That's it.
I think that is treating men who go onto that website like children, like dumbasses, bluntly.
This is
okay?
the beauty of a liberal. This is the beauty of a liberal society.
No, it's not.
Yes,
No,
it
it's
is.
not.
Yes,
No, it's not.
we.
I will
Yes,
tell you why that's
yes,
not
it
true.
is.
Okay?
Yes,
No,
it
it's not.
is.
You have a legal
Save us,
reason
Fairy
to
Queen.
believe
Okay,
it.
okay, one
Save
at a
us,
time,
Fairy
hold on,
Queen.
both of you, one at
Tell
a
us
time,
what's
one at a
wrong.
time, one at a time. Okay, so Kyla says yes, you say no. Tell us why no, and then she can explain why yes. Go ahead. No,
Okay,
and then yes.
so when we are thinking about what a term means and what a definition means, we don't care about what the dumbass thinks. We care about what a reasonable person would believe. And one of the examples I can give you of an actual piece of legislation that shows that is from the Miller test from 1973, and how we decide whether or not a piece of media is actually considered to be a piece of obscenity. And the way that we judge that is not based off of whether or not a dumbass off the street looks at it and thinks it's a piece of obscenity. It's based off of whether or not a reasonable person. I can find you so many examples of where the
in cases of exploitation, we don't look for reasonality. We're willing to basically say in a liberal society that yes, there are going to be dumbasses in the world, but we do our best to try to protect dumbasses from really, really dangerous bad decisions. Yes, we do.
No, we don't. I'll give you a clear example of how that's not true, okay? So an example of this would be People's Magazine. When you go to the grocery store, you will find that there are tons of trashy tabloids that have great big things, right? They'll say things like, Prince Harry died off the side of England, right? Is it exploitation for you to go and to buy that magazine and then opening it up and you find on page 17 that actually he lived, he didn't really die, it was just his heart that died? Well, no, right? And you want to know something? Why? Because dumbasses buy that magazine, okay? I can show you.
Lying about
think
this
there's any hope
info
for them.
isn't analogous to lying about the nature of your intimate relationship with a client you are personally talking to. You realize why magazines doing bullshit, which sure, maybe we could talk about the magazine industry. Just because two things might be unethical doesn't mean they're the same thing. And we have to talk about the same things.
No. It matters in a legal sense because you are saying, legally speaking, if it is true that we care about the dumbasses of society and you're selling something that the dumbasses of society might mistake, right? That should mean that a dumbass that picks up a tabloid that says something stupid should have recourse to sue, and they don't have recourse to sue. And the same thing is true with OnlyFans, and the same thing is true with all of the other examples as well. But if you disagree with me and you think that it is,
Sure. Do you think it's reasonable for a 13-year-old girl to believe that a 30-year-old is genuinely into her?
What?
obviously
Can you
not.
repeat that?
Yeah.
What's happening?
I think it's reasonable for a 13-year-old girl to believe that a 30-year-old is just genuinely into her.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Do you think the person who's
I do.
29 years old, who's the average age in man on OnlyFans,
No,
is like
girl,
a
listen to the
30-year-old
question. But listen
Wait
to
a
the question.
second. Wait a
That's the
second.
same.
Hold on. Wait a second. Hold on. Please.
I gotta go in like a minute.
I understand. Brittany, what? You think it's reasonable for a 13-year-old girl to believe that a 30-year-old man is into her? Can you
Yeah, because
elaborate?
she's the victim. Because she's gonna be manipulated and assuming this older man is not lying to her.
She's taking an interpersonal. She's like empathizing with a
Okay.
13-year-old herself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because she's
Do you think?
most
Okay.
adult men that are on that website are not children. Do you see why
So
that's not?
when pyramid schemes engage in fraud against people, it's still illegal, even though you're kind of a dumbass for getting engaged in a pyramid scheme. When 13-year-olds get taken advantage of 30-year-olds, they're kind of dumbasses because they're 13, but it's still fucking illegal because when it comes to exploitation, we absolutely account. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what worlds you live in. If you think that we don't try to make off-roads for dumb fucks.
I don't even
Like,
remember
I
what
don't know what to tell you.
Okay, look, the fact
Okay.
of the matter is the reason why you can be sued in a pyramid scheme, it's not because dumbasses on the street might read something and mistake it, okay? It's because the pyramid scheme has lied to people, deliberately lied to people.
That's
It's
my
a lie.
point. Yes, thank you, Fairy Queen. We got there together. If you were deliberately lying to your clients to make money, it's bad, and you shouldn't do that. It's super complicated.
consistent. If you actually believe that, you should think that they should go to jail. And the fact that
I
you
didn't
don't
say that I believe that they should go to jail. You just put that into my argumentation. I've said if you're
wanna know
lying to
why?
your client, it's unethical. I would prefer a platform that doesn't want them. Like at this point, you're just infantilizing women by saying that women
You're
should
right.
it's reasonable for
Okay,
women to
okay, enough.
clients. This is crazy.
Okay.
This is bullshit.
Infantilize women hour. I love rad fans. Okay, I gotta go. Sorry guys.
Bye, Kyla.
You think they're dumbasses. Yeah. I'm sorry.
What I will say is that I think a lot of you guys are liberals in here, so you're like choice, freedom. Don't put your government in my prostitution. I really think that an extra step to where Kyla's going is literally just that there is an exploitative nature to sex work in general. That is just true. And I will say this again. If we want a healthy, I'll use even Brittany's wording, if we want a healthy world, statistically, we know that monogamy is very good. Crime rates go down. Birth rates go up, right? That's very good for society. That's very healthy, right?
We're different. Healthy's so subjective in your world. I don't know why you have to have babies to be healthy, but okay.
Well, when we're talking about like a healthy or a happy economy, so like if we want
I don't
Social
make
Security
babies to
work,
be workers. Like I think it's unethical to have a baby to be a taxpayer.
then why? Okay, I don't. Whatever. I just think that like even like less crime, right? Less crime, less rape, less resource guarding. In a world where we'd like to have more social institutions, less poor people. It's good that we steer people in the right directions, and so I think that being against sex work for the exploitative nature against the client and against the woman is the right choice.
Lav, can I ask you a personal question?
Okay,
You
ask a personal
sure
question, then
can.
go
I
ahead.
would love that.
Maybe
How
this
much money
will
have you
be-
made on OnlyFans? In total.
In total, probably just under $1 million.
How do you feel about that?
Baller.
Good and bad. It took me out of I was a survival sex worker and then I became a choice sex worker. So, but now I also feel very guilty and very dirty.
You can offload your guilt by donating to me, gang. I'm just
Oh my
letting you know right now that is a thing you can do. But I wanted to explore this a little bit, right? Because earlier you said something, Lav, that you and Erudites positions were different, and I wanted to kind of dig into that. Maybe we could take the conversation.
Can I just quickly back up just for a second? I would just like to quickly add that in streaming, and I've been doing it since Justin TV. There have been many females who have coached other females into how to soak men for money on stream. To go the line, to flirt with men. It's super common in the streaming world. And I have personally experienced and seen other women in the space, not me, toe that line in DM donors that have zero intention of actually ever meeting up or hooking up and implying that it's going to happen to encourage more financial support. So I just wanted to add to that. I've seen it. I have been around since Justin TV. So I've seen it a lot on different platforms. So I that's it. I just wanted to add that. That's it.
Well, and that's to the point, though. Thank you for that, because again, with Twitch's new TOS policy and their clarification, so to speak, again, this lying, using sexuality to lie to your audience seems to be happening on Twitch too. So why is OnlyFans worse?
That's why I think that Kyla's argument kind of fizzles out, is because the basis of the exploitation is that you are getting something that you are not getting, and she thinks that the problem is like harm reduction, in that like the sex worker can just be as clear as possible. But even when they are being as clear as possible, there's still a problem. It's taking you away from real life. It's taking you away from having a partner. It's taking you away from having real intimate relationships that are healthy for you, that are healthy for society. So that's what I think the problem is. I don't think that streaming is not harmful. I think that they're just different scales, right? So it's explicitly sexual on OnlyFans, but this is why I brought up in the beginning that there are plenty of people plenty of sex workers who use Twitch to go to their OnlyFans, or use Twitch in a very explicitly sexual way. I think that the problem is having a sexual relationship in any capacity. OnlyFans just happens to be centered around that, which is why it's more of a problem. But it's just to varying degrees. It's a scale.
Any responses to this?
I think that OnlyFans is kind of centered in the conversation because it elicits an emotional reaction from people because some people feel very emotionally about sex. That's my take on it. I just think that, and I know some people view it differently, but I obviously I did a poll on my Twitter, and I know my audience isn't huge, but most people felt they would get more attached to a content creator versus an OnlyFans. And I asked males and friends how they felt about it, and people who use the site, and they also felt that they would get more attached to a YouTuber or a streamer. And I also would like to add that there have been many crypto scams. There's a YouTuber who did a board game scam and had everybody pay for this board game, and then in the end nobody won. Like, there's a lot of scams that happen on YouTube and all these other platforms that are not sex related where people get absolutely soaked. So
Yeah, given that like, we can look at the crypto scams just in general, right? How many millions of dollars has been lost from that? So when we talk about like sex work or sexuality, I remain unconvinced that it is a necessary component in this. I think that different groups are vulnerable in different ways, right? And while someone who is in a healthy relationship may or may not be more vulnerable to the friendship angle than the sex work angle. That could be, I'm not going by data here. I'm going off of instinct, intuition. I could be wrong though. Tell me why I am.
If I can just respond to something that you said earlier, which had to do, you gave the example of the kid who like stole his parents' credit card, and then they spent thousands of dollars. That's something that certainly happens like on Twitch, and I'm sure that it happens even on OnlyFans. Unfortunately, like even if there is an age verification system, what is the age verification system? Is it a driver's license? Is it a box that you check? I'm pretty sure if you have a credit card, you can.
I honestly don't know for OnlyFans what the system is, to be honest with you. So
For a model, you have to show your driver's license or
it's
birth
like
certificate or something. Yeah.
What about if you're a kid? What if you're a person trying
What if you're a kid?
Well, honestly, like that is concern, right?
No, it's like
Concern is-
Patreon. You just read the terms
Yeah, I
of
think
service
it's-
and press I consent.
Yeah.
as long as you
So
get a credit card. I assume.
the reality is, unfortunately, even with that barrier, there probably will be kids that will try to get into OnlyFans who will try to do that anyway. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have more safeguards, frankly, on all social media platforms.
Yeah, I
we
agree
should
with
have.
And you need to take an IQ test.
Well, I
IQ
don't
test
know about that.
and show your driver's license.
Well, the
Well, what
IQ test is signing up for OnlyFans in the first place, right?
I will. Well, the reason I wanted to jump on that, though, and I wanted to jump on that because you mentioned like exploitation of these kids that want to pay for like their favorite video gamers. The reverse of that is a huge problem, and was a huge problem last year in September on Twitch. Last year in September on Twitch, about 300,000 children who were on Twitch were targeted by predators. And what happened was these kids, they were 13-year-old kids. They wanted to stream themselves gaming, right, with their friends. And so they would talk to their friends. Child predators came into those kids' chats. They would pay the super chats. They would try to get them into performing lewd acts on screen. They would try to ask them for private information, like where they live. They would ask them for like their cell phone number, and they tried to track and target them. And so the reality is these platforms, like across the board, regardless of whether or not it's OnlyFans, Twitch, or Twitter, regardless of what it is, we need to gatekeep all of them better. No child under the age, no kid should have access to any of this. It's clearly not safe. We've known that it has huge impacts on kids' mental health, and we've known it for years. We've known it for so long. We need to take a stand and ask these companies, instead of banning one person,
We
and
can't let
instead
these
of
Jewish pornographers get away with it. We can't any longer.
The child thing also
You
happens on
mean
TikTok a lot. I
Zionist
see it all the
pornographer?
time
You
on
gotta say
TikTok, so.
Zionist now, okay? You can't say Jewish. You gotta say Zionist. Okay, that's just
No,
how it works.
it's the Jews. Look at who owns Pornhub and OnlyFans. I mean, come on.
Going back
There's
to
a
what you
trend.
said, Wick, I think it's ultimately about intimacy and closeness,
Okay.
right? We talk about a loneliness epidemic. Kids don't feel seen. Adults don't feel seen. Obviously, like we live vicariously through the content we consume. I don't know about you, but I had a thing for Britney Spears growing up. I had a thing for the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and My Chemical Romance. And as a teenager, did I totally fantasize about them? Sure. And then you grow up and you get over it because you realize they're people and you were just having like a childhood crush. And I think the only difference here is that there's more accessibility to the streamer and to the model, right? Depending on how they run their businesses or how famous they are. And ultimately, this could either lead to the best circumstance in the world, like falling in love, or the worst circumstance in the world where you're being exploited. And it really falls on the people involved to really know what's happening and the people around them to support them through that process. Like with Colleen Ballinger and the teenagers, YouTube is not like YouTube took Colleen down. It's not like, those text messages leaking mattered. You know what I mean? All that matters now is that parents need to be more diligent about who their kids are talking to, and that the people who are consuming products built by a business, a model, need to be aware of what they're consuming, right? Like as a person, as a streamer, I'm trying my best, but I can't literally shoulder the burden of everyone's mental health. Like that's not my job. But at the same time, I'm doing my best and I have to hope that's good enough, right? But I am afraid with this idea of like, we're going to bring jail in, and we're going to bring the courts in, and we're going to bring all this. It's like, yes, it's for certain circumstances, I think you're reasonable and that's rational and I won't argue. But I think often we go right to like the worst
Can you
consequences.
elaborate on that a little bit, if I may? I'm sorry to interrupt, but so you mentioned that under certain circumstances you would be okay with that. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I think like if you have adult content creators involving, or of any kind, involving themselves with children knowably, the platforms I think have a good reason to maybe like deplatform that person. I could see that.
Count would what I guess would you count in that a Twitch streamer, a Twitch booby streamer, or a hot tub streamer having a link to their more lewd sites in their bio on Twitch or something? So knowing that there are going to be minors in their stream, telling their audience, right, who they, again, know that there's going to be some minors in there, say, hey, here's how you can find my spicier pics and things like that.
Can
Would
you
that
answer
count under
one
that?
question for Twitch stuff for me? Is Twitch really an 18? Is there really an 18 plus section on Twitch?
Yeah. Well,
Disclaimers. You
no.
have to click I
It's
am
a disclaimer.
over 18.
Yes.
Okay, so I
But I also
personally
did that when I looked at porn when I was younger. So
Yeah,
this
sure.
is, yeah, like true. It's we all looked at porn. Okay, I personally, if I'm being really honest with you, I would find it to be very unethical to perform any sort of adult adjacent activity on a website that also allows 13-year-olds. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't do this on OF. I think it's really inconsiderate of the minors on the site, and I think it's really dangerous, and I actually think it's kind of predatory. But I also think those girls might not even see themselves as predators, even though they should know better, and I think they should really be considerate of the young people
it-
on this website who
Yeah,
have
does
now
it matter if
directed-
they see themselves as predators, right? Like they could think they're
I
doing
think
the
I think it does in terms of consequence. I think it does in terms of culture. I think if they're held accountable, then Twitch has to be held accountable because they're allowing it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both should be, but like I don't necessarily care what the predator thinks that if they're being a predator or not, right?
Well, they might
They
not
can
be
believe,
though, right? Like,
right?
what
They
if they're
can
just like a
believe
hippie who's
that
doing
what
nude
they're
art?
doing is like just free love. We're just offering. I don't have a problem if kids see my titties, kind of deal.
Well,
They could think that,
I
but it
think
doesn't
they
matter
think.
what they think.
Well, I think they think they're on the 18 plus side, so that must matter. Like they're thinking there's no way kids are going to get here. You know what I mean? Maybe it's innocent. I want to be nuanced and allow for
No one
an
got
option.
to.
But I think like, look, I watched all the titty streamers the other day. I'm kind of shook because it looks just like Chatterbait to me. So I'm like, whoa, like, okay, I love it. Like as adult work, I don't love it on a site that's adjacent to children.
Yeah, I
Can-
just
can
I
we-
just don't know why that's allowed on the site. They can just make Twitch could make so much money to have like sort of a softcore porn streaming site. So I don't know why
like
they
a
keep
second
it on
site
the
would
same
make so much
website.
sense.
They already make money
Yeah.
off of the adult content. That's kind of why the rules are not set in stone, right? They keep that line blurry. They
Yeah.
can preferentially ban, and they benefit from that adult content being on the website.
It's so
That's
weird.
Why
Isn't-
the rules are the way they
Sure.
are.
Sorry, Aurora. Isn't Twitch the same site? Like, I'm so afraid of always being on there because I'm afraid I'm going to break TOS somehow with my like. And then I'm sitting here like, wait, tits are allowed there? Like, how could I ever break TOS on
Literally,
there?
I will like wear like a tiny crop top, and I'm terrified I'm gonna end
Literally,
up banned.
it's
for
like,
it, or,
what?
shorts that show like a little booty crease. I'm
Yeah.
terrified of
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because a bigger streamer might get away with that, and that's why the rules are so like this. It's so that they can line their pockets and still protect themselves. So.
Yeah.
And again, I want to remind you that just today, Twitch clarified the rules on this, and certain things that weren't allowed before are now allowed, such as twerking, stripper pole dances, all these
Artistic nudity.
artistic nudity.
So I
whatever
will be
that means.
artistically taking off my clothes right now, actually. So I hope
Don't do
that
it for
everyone's
free.
ready.
No, I don't think I want that on my stream. Personally. However, I think that like again, the arguments that OnlyFans is uniquely like this seem to be falling apart when we recognize that women and men too on even Twitch are engaging in this behavior. And so and with no consequence or very little consequence. Fairy Queen, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the fact that Twitch has actually loosened its policy regarding to that just gives further credence to the idea that Twitch is it should not be a platform available to kids. It should not be a child-friendly platform. It should be, and frankly, I know that like a lot of people have said that it is because of the gaming aspect. Here's a couple of things that I have questions for. Number one, does anybody here who stream on Twitch, do you guys have age demographic data? Can you see, like, if any of you, I don't stream on Twitch, so I don't know. Do you know, I know on YouTube you know the age. I don't know if you know that on Twitch. I've asked some other people and they've said that they can't find it or that they don't know where to look for it. So I'm curious.
Regional data.
And the second thing is, let's be real here, like Wick. Like there have been a lot of highly adult panels that you have held that have been held.
Yeah,
on the
Wick,
stream.
you're a predator.
Yeah, Wick.
Well, no, but no,
You
like
leave
it's
Wick
not
alone.
none of these people are predators, right? But let's be honest, like there are panels.
I
like,
mean, I'll take
where,
my shirt off for $50. I don't know.
Somebody
well,
do it.
But I mean,
Keep it on for 100?
But
I'll
there are
put it back
panels
on
where
for 100.
there are panels where literally the point is to sit around in a circle and to smoke pot and to share your weed thoughts with the rest of the audience. There are drunk streams where people will get drunk on stream. Not on Twitch, but on Kick, you had the slur panel where you had Doobie and you had Zonia saying N-word with the hard R, right? We've had, like, I know that there was a Twitch stream about veganism that devolved into a conversation about bestiality and a lot of gross jokes about Shane Dawson sexually abusing a
panel.
Like, let's be honest, like a lot of the panels that are hosted on here and the content that's promoted on here, it's just not meant to be viewed for children. It's not meant for kids, which is why, especially given like Twitch's new policy, we should try to have a push to banning kids off of Twitch. That's something
You're so
that we should
active,
do.
girl. I love
let me
that.
be
But
clear.
wait, just for the record, if you get rid of kids and titty streamers, like, what is Twitch? Like, what
a
is it?
better platform. But ultimately, I think I'm not a Puritan. I think that if like first of all, it's no Twitch girls dilemma to make sure that that they're raising your kids, right? Like parents need to be way more active in their children's lives, and especially on a place like Twitch where you're not allowed to like simulate sex or to show your nipples or to show like anything. I think that it's less of a problem. I think if you walk in and you like hear someone say the N-word and you're like 13, who gives a shit? But the porn, places like OnlyFans definitely has more of an imperative to regulate stuff that.
I want to interrogate that, Lab, because to Fairy Queen's point, what is the difference between allowing people to see streams about getting drunk and high versus what about?
Well, they get
the
to
sexuality is
learn from
different,
example.
right?
They get to learn to not do drugs because they make you retarded. So I think that's a plus. But yeah, I just think that there are certain things. I mean, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a child developmental psychologist, so I don't know like what the line is for children, but I know that like, just seeing someone's breasts is unlikely to traumatize you or make you feel any sort of way. But simulating sex does, right? So like a child seeing their family's nude body is different than a child walking in and seeing their parents like monkey fucking each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but let me ask all of you a question, okay? Like, this is a genuine question. Do any of you have relatives, children, younger brothers or sisters who are about like 15, who are about in that age range? Do any of you have a relative? Could be a nephew, could be a niece, could be somebody in that age range.
Yes.
Okay, I have. Does
love her.
anybody else? Does anybody else have a relative that they care about that's in that age range?
I'm
Wait,
not
how
close
old?
with any of my family.
In their teenage years, so minor, but somebody who
My s-
ostensibly could have a Twitch account.
My sister's 18.
Anybody else? So I have right now a 15-year-old sister. So my sister is 15. So she technically could have a Twitch account. I'll just be honest with you. Yes, I would be horrified for her to see a simulated sex act, but I would be absolutely appalled if to find out my sister was watching, a bunch of adults getting drunk and high or saying the N-word or doing all of the many things that we do on this platform. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with producing adult
Wait,
content.
would you be equally horrified on these two things? If you found out your sister was watching a panel where someone dropped the hard R, you would be equally horrified than if you found out that she was watching a panel where they were simulating sex acts.
No, I would not be equally horrified, but I will tell you what I would be equally horrified if she had a Twitter account and she was scrolling through all of the stuff about Hamas versus Israel or the stuff from the Ukrainian war, and she was watching people being blown up or people being shot or people like cowering in a corner, which you can find on Twitter.
Yeah, the gore is crazy.
You can find so many horrible things.
You know there used to be no laws against gore on newspaper, so they would show dead bodies on newspaper for like anyone to see. Isn't that fucking gnarly?
I would have to
This
say
is
for
not
my
even 50 years
childhood, like the most traumatic thing I can think about, I came from the rotten.com era. And that shit fucked
Best
me
gore
up.
rotten.com. Yeah.
Literally, like, or I would go on 4chan and look at gore threats. Like, so like notably that really fucked me up. But it's interesting. I just looked. Twitch minimum age still 13 despite the rule change. So I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, I guess they're just trying to make money. There's going to be a push, I think. I think that it'll level itself out. I think that we just have to do some waiting.
I suppose. Just two quick things, and then we're kind of wrapping it up, and we'll get to closing statements, allow you guys to have your outros and things like that. I know some of you have to go. If you want to stay for call-ins, you can. If not, I understand. So two quick things. One, right, on the gore in newspapers and things. I think that there is an argument that can be made that allowing war photography and showing the gore and showing the horrors of war has actually made war less glorified in society and for the public. People being able to see the results of what happens when you drop a bomb, right, has turned people off from war. And I think that's largely a good thing.
It's anti-war propaganda, literally.
Yeah, it's largely a good thing. So I can see a value to having these things on Twitter, having these things on newspapers, having these things on CNN, et cetera, that I don't necessarily see the same value when it comes to people showing their titties, right?
I don't disagree. But what I would say specifically, like for an adult person, sure, right? But for a child, for somebody that's 15, my 15-year-old sister should not be watching people being shirtless in a line, being rounded up by soldiers in the middle of the streets of Gaza. That is not content that is appropriate for my sister to see. And I don't want her to be exposed to it, or pictures of people being mutilated or severed heads or God knows what else you can find on there. My sister should not be able to have access to a website where you can go to somebody's
So you don't want your sister to be cool? So you don't want your sister to be cool and edgy?
I don't want my sister to be.
Well, the truth is, a kid that young, they don't really have the understanding that an adult would by looking at it. It's not like they're gonna have a takeaway from it the same way.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to advocate for my 15-year-olds over here. Like, as we reach high school, we reach a peak of beginning the road to adulthood. We need all of the proper information and guidance to be ready to handle life at this very ripe age of 18, which is the legal age of all of us being responsible for choosing to go to war, choosing what to do with our bodies. Maybe we'll sign up for OF. Like, we need to start preparing those kids, not by showing it to them on purpose, but when they do see it inevitably, instead of being afraid about it, we should be ready to be like, hey, bro, you saw the video. Let's talk about it. As a millennial that had the internet, and I saw a lot at a young age, let's talk about it. But I feel like, again, the fear and the voices, like, I don't infantilize my teenage siblings. Like, I'm the oldest of 10, or third oldest of 10. Like, I don't infantilize them. I just have a conversation with them because I know that I hated that when I was 15. But also, like, it did prepare me. And I guess it's different as I'm a Syrian. So we watched a lot of war photography and documentaries to learn about what happened to our people during the genocide. So for us, like, for me, when I think about like what should be shown to kids, it's more like when are we going to prepare kids to be adults? And I think high school is a proper age.
Sure. Let me ask you directly, Brittany, and if I may just real quick. So if you found out that one of your younger siblings, nephews, whatever, right, was watching OnlyFans, had an OnlyFans account that they had finagled, right, would you cut them off from that?
I don't think you could cut them off for that. I would like sit down and have a conversation with them about like, okay, so this content creator, there's like a paywall, and I know you're going to get porn for free, but let's talk about what porn is. I don't think taking away porn from them is like reasonable because it just doesn't make sense to my brain. Like, I got porn when I was a kid. Like, taking it away didn't do shit. So having a conversation about it and being more honest about what you're doing and the relationship you're having with that porn is much more of a better conversation in my
Okay, so
mind.
you would not
I-
take away the porn.
I don't
from
think
I
them.
think
you
it
can
depends
take it
on
away
the
from them. I
age.
think it's a fantasy that we can take away. What would
13,
I do?
14, 15.
But what would
right?
I
Yeah,
do?
so,
Take away
so
the
I think
internet?
it does
Like, what would I
depend
do?
significantly on the age. Like, there's a reason why you can drink it at 21 and sign up for war at
I come from a different
18
culture, right?
and
Like, my dad gave me a beer on my 18th birthday and was like, "You are now a woman."
sure,
So, like,
sure,
what does
sure,
that
sure,
mean?
sure. But I think for me, at least arbitrarily, just anecdotally on my life, I probably, if my kid's watching porn at like 13, I'm gonna take away their internet access. But if they're watching porn at like 16, I'm gonna be less inclined to do that, and I'm gonna have a talk that's just like, don't hurt yourself. Here are the dangers. I think once you reach certain ages, you know more. So I really think it's case by case. Also, if you have a highly naive child or someone that you don't think will experience that very well or is very sensitive to stuff like that, material like that, definitely you're going to have different rules for a child that's more worldly and more,
I didn't have
capable of
guidance as a
understanding.
child. I didn't have
Yeah.
a parent there for me to help me parse information, to go through stuff like that. So I'm a different example, right? I didn't have that guidance. So something
Would
that,
you give it if you had a sibling or a daughter or a child or a nephew or niece? Would you take away their internet access, or would you cut them off from the porn if you found out that your 15-year-old was watching porn?
yeah, I would.
Okay, you
I
would.
would at
Mhm.
15.
Fairy
Yeah.
Queen.
If I can just pop in here, because I do have a 15-year-old sister, but I also work as a teacher. So I've worked with kids of that age. I've worked in high school. I work as a graduate instructor. I work with kids in the YAP population. I've worked with a variety of kids in high school and beyond. Okay. And one thing I will say about like working with kids specifically, right? Typically, like when we talk about what's best for kids or what would work for kids, it's easy for us to think about our own experience of what we were like when we were 15, right? You remember your experience of what it was like for you to be as a 15-year-old, right? It's an entirely different experience when you work with 15-year-olds, when you work with people of that age population, and you go back and you see exactly how dumb a 15 or an 18-year-old kid actually is. You would be amazed. Like if you went, like some of these kids that like are 18, 19, like they're my students in my classroom. Yeah, they might be 18 and they might actually be adults, but they're dumb. They're sweet. They're dumb, but I love them. But they don't have any concept of the world. And I can tell every single time I go in to speak to them just how little and how fragile they are. And so I think that's an important thing to think about too, right? Like to think about not just our own experience of what it was like when we were 15, but think about the 15-year-olds that you have met and interacted with. Do you want that person who you see out in the world to have access to this kind of thing? As a teacher,
This is why we should do mandatory military conscription. Grow them up.
Okay,
Grow 'em
so
up.
again, I just want to
Time
know,
for the
like,
real world, baby.
it's not about giving them porn. Don't be weird. It's about how do you take the internet away from a 15-year-old?
Oh,
Like, what boomer
no,
logic is this? Like, right?
No. Well, the honest answer is that you sit down with them and you explain to them the dangers of it, which is kind of
Right, but
probably
like
what
not in a
Farrell
fearful way. Like,
said,
I don't
right?
know. I'm not afraid of the world. The world is already as chaotic as it is. I just want to explain to them, like, this is how the world works, my bros. If you want to go into it fearful, do it. If you want to stay naive at 18, that's a problem. That's a red flag. Someone didn't raise you right. So let's
Yeah.
talk about getting you ready to be 18, right? That means someone wasn't raised right if they're naive at 18, right? So like that's a problem. So in my mind, again, start them in high school, get them ready for the real world by explaining to them what they will face and the consequences to their brain, their sensitivities, their lovemaking future, their dating prospects, and then do your best because honestly, they're still
Okay.
going to have to go through a journey.
I can agree
Oh,
with that.
I-
Especially as like a 15-year-old.
I don't know.
You should raise your children's to the point where they never have to go to an OnlyFans girl to get intimacy. That is ideal, right?
To get
Like, that is
intimacy, I
ideal.
agree with you. To get intimacy, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
I'm
To
gonna
enjoy
I'm
porn?
gonna just
Actually, a
Sure,
really
to get
good
enjoy
program.
porn, get your rocks off, I guess.
It's
I'm
actually a
just
really
saying
good
if I had if my nephew, right, if I found out that he was watching pornography or paying for an OnlyFans girl or whatever, right? I understand that I can't prevent it 100%, right? I understand it's going to happen anyway. I get that, but I do think it's beholden upon the grown up in the situation to put a barrier between them and that if they can't, right? And I think that, yeah, obviously, if I found out my nephew was watching pornography, right, and I would do something to maybe
Mhm.
curtail that, because I think that pornography overall is kind of harmful. But that's
If I
another
fo-
discussion.
if
That's
I
another
found out that
discussion.
my son was watching like porn on like his phone or something, I'd absolutely take it off the internet and give him some old fucking like nudie mags from 1970s. I'm like, here, have your way with these things, but you are not gonna have access to all the world's fucking dungeon rape torture porn. Do your healthy thing, but Jesus Christ, like
Okay.
at least under my roof, you're gonna not be insane.
Okay,
Yeah,
gang, this has been a discussion. I have enjoyed it. We had a lot of yelly, screamy, and we had some calm stuff. It was a good mixture. Okay. Thank you for coming. If you've liked this content, you would not be exploiting me if you hit that like button and the subscribe button. If you hit that follow button, also not exploitive. Thank you for the gift subs, gang. Thrash95 subscribing with Prime, great. Like on YouTube, on Kick, or on Twitch, you can subscribe to me. You could throw me money. You could throw me bits. You could throw me super chats. All these things are good. I want to give each of these individuals a chance to have an outro. Some of them need to go, but if they'd like to stay, we're gonna do until I'm bored with it. We're gonna do call-ins. So that's how we'll do it. We'll start with Brittany. We'll go around. Brittany, closing thoughts.
First and foremost, my audience is asking how to get onto your call-ins. It's your Discord, right?
Yeah, it's just in my Discord. Can you link them that, or do I need to?
No, I can link it.
Just
Yeah,
have them
most
accept
boomer,
the
but I'll
rules.
link it. I'll link it.
Sure. Link it. Once you click on that link, gang, you accept the rules by hitting my face emote, and then you jump backstage, and we'll pull you in one at a time.
Yeah, I'll stay on. For those asking, I'll stay on. I'm happy to be here. That would be
Beautiful.
great. Closing remarks is I think I liked that by the end of the conversation, I think we all could find a nice little like agreement area, which is like we want the best for people and we want harm reduction. And so I think as long as harm reduction is in our the forefront of our intentions, I think that's the best I could hope for society, right? Is harm reduction. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And during this stream, Wick, I had my Nightbot on, so your link was being exploited the whole time in chat.
Hell yes, I live for being
Okay,
exploited.
okay.
Go on,
I'll be
guys.
right back.
See you later. Thank you for coming, gang. You can check her out. Yeah, give her a follow, give her a sub, all that. Laugh, go ahead.
I'm Lav. I'm Impish Pixie now. Another rebrand. Sorry, guys. I just like to rebrand. I have fucking BPD or something. Just love to do it. And I have a podcast. It's called Bloodbath Pod. I just recently had my latest episode taken off of YouTube because I said the K slur. So 15-year-old siblings, keep them away from my podcast because I be saying those bad words. I do be saying them. Yeah, I am also glad that we all, I mean, obviously we're all here because we want to change the world in a positive way. So that's all you can really ask for, even though mine is a little more extreme. Sorry, I'm a little bit on the neocon side and I want to protect the children. None of you care about children as much as I do. So that's, thank you.
I don't think
Thank you
that's
for being here. Check it out, Bloodbath, gang, and it's spicy. It'll get you that edgy content you want. Go check it out. To be clear, I'm not here to save the world. I'm here to make money. That's what I'm here for. Fairy Queen, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Fairy Queen. You can check me out at Fairy Queen's Cottage. I will drop the link right now in Wick's Twitch stream. Go ahead and give me a follow if you haven't already. My outro would be this, okay? We need to talk about the way that the word accountability is used against women. Because in my opinion, like the way that it is used, that I do not believe that the way that it is used right now is a genuine desire for evidence or a genuine desire for accountability. I think that it's used as a way to weaponize and to beat women over the head. Specifically, I think there are 3 things that happen on this platform that women are accused of, and all 3 of those things are things that have happened to sex workers who have been on this. The first one is pedojacketing, rape jacketing, accusing somebody of being a predator with little or no evidence to prove it. That's something that has happened to sex workers here who are in this industry, and they have been accused with barely any evidence as being predators or having predatory nature. Second thing is Darvo. So saying that, somebody is abusive when actually you are the person exploiting and you are the person taking advantage of the other person, but you turn around and you claim the other person is exploiting you. That's what's happened with sex work. That's what's happened is men, instead of taking accountability for their relationship and the way that they treat sex workers, have instead turned around and have spent endless hours talking about how they are sexist, talking about how evil sex workers are, and about how OnlyFans should be ended. And finally, a lack of responsibility. Women are often accused of not taking accountability, responsibility for stupid decisions in their sex lives. I am not sure at all why it is that we constantly entertain all of these conversations about dumbasses who will pay tons of money to sex workers, right? And we treat them with endless reams of sympathy. But when a woman makes a mistake in her sex life or does something stupid, she's raked over the coals for it. So I want there to be a change, and I hope that there will be one. Please check me out. I go over feminist theory. I have all women's panels. I'm looking to interview sex workers. If anybody who's interested in hopping on, I'd be really interested in your experience. Again, it's at Fairy Queen's Cottage. I've just dropped my link in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. Go check her out, gang. Last but certainly not least, Rora.
So I would like to echo what Fairy Queen is saying. I do think that women, particularly in this sector, I just want to keep it into this space, are raked over the coals and held accountable. And I do understand that this is a largely male audience, so I get why the conversation is surrounding that. But in the same aspect, it is interesting to see that women are held accountable, and sort of this, the consumer agency isn't put into question as much. I don't agree that OnlyFans is unique as far as the exploitative nature. I do think that streaming it is more widely exploitative to the consumer, and I've listed multiple ways. I've listed my experience. I know it's anecdotal, but I've heard it from a lot of other people as well. And I would agree that obviously I am here for the betterment of society, sex work, and all of that. My name is Rora Pickles, technically on all social media except Twitch. I am just Rora there. Thank you for having me and exploiting me, Wick. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks again, gang. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to talk to these people, the ones who choose to stay, you can by !Discord and chat, clicking the link, accepting the rules by hitting that emote, and then jump backstage and we'll pull you in. We'll talk to you for a couple minutes. You could have your questions, and then we'll let you go. And that's how it'll work. But thanks again for coming. And yeah, if you need to go, I know Fairy Queen, you needed to go, so
I'm going to be going
yes.
too.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Wick. Thank you all. I had a great conversation. Hope you all have a good day. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I'm heading out too. Thank you, Wick, and it was good chatting with y'all.
Have a great day.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hey, Xerxes, you're up. You're ready.
What's up, man? What's up? So one thing I actually thought was really interesting, pleasantly surprised, Lav actually kind of touched something that was great that no one really stopped to
Oh, I'd
chew
be
on.
touching things.
Yeah, you'd be touching a lot. No, I'm joking. But one thing that I thought was interesting, she kind of brought up the fact that going into OnlyFans is kind of different type of pornography, and that is the fact that like you're actually that a lot of the ladies on OnlyFans now are normal, regular women, and that changes the nature of interacting with that content. I think a lot of people don't
Yes.
really talk about. They don't really stop and really analyze that there is a reality and a possibility of meeting and engaging with these women, despite the fact that they say there's not. And that's the hook, line, sinker of it. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was talking to this one,
Okay.
she was doing a stream on OnlyFans, right? And it was so interesting because she was talking about her boyfriend, whom she met on OnlyFans, who was also in the chat. So he and I talked to both of them. I was asking questions to the girl on stream and to the boyfriend, and that's how they met on OnlyFans. And they did content together, right? He was just a guy who subscribed to her. They started talking, they liked each other, and they engaged. And that's the dream, quote unquote, right, of the men who are engaging with these women. But the dream is a reality, unfortunately, and I do think that we don't really cover that. When we talk about OnlyFans
Hey,
exploiting young
what's your
men.
question, my friend? What's
So
your
it's not really so it's not really a question. It's more
He's
like
adding.
exactly. I wanted more, especially from Lav's point of view, like, and even Brittany kind of addressing this too. I wanted all the girls to really kind of add on to the shift in the changing nature of OnlyFans pornography and how it is far
If
more intimate in its nature than
If I
anything
can
else we've ever seen.
extrapolate, because I think that this
Mhm.
is very interesting to talk about, because I think OnlyFans has been consequential positively and negatively. One, I don't think it's healthy to watch pornography and think of this woman as like a sack of meat that's being fucked, right? Like that's not good for society. But then on the other hand, you're also having relationships that are unnatural to human beings. So
Mhm.
it's a give and a take. It's not it's there's no complete right answer, because obviously I am very sex positive. I think that watching people have sex is a very natural want. I think that it's a healthy want. But I just, when I think about what is best for society statistically, it just seems like
So can I push back and try to get your thoughts on this? Why
sure.
should we extend for people watching sex instead of encouraging people to actually do it in healthier relationships?
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
that's what I'm saying with OnlyFans is like
Okay.
we absolutely should be at least socially shaming people who watch OnlyFans and
I
buy
think we do. We
OnlyFans.
call them simps. Yeah, we do call them
Yeah,
simps.
yeah. I think that that's a good idea. I think that also like women choosing their partners, choosing their breeding partners. Personally, I would never be with someone who bought anyone's OnlyFans. I would never be with someone who regularly watched porn. That's what when I'm selecting for my mate, that's just not something that I want. And I think that more women should probably do that.
I wanna get
Mhm.
Brittany's opinion on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite, which is funny enough. Like and not that I would have thought less of him, but I did think more of him, my husband. I asked him when we were dating, I was like, "Did you buy my OnlyFans?" And he was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Thank you." Like I feel so much better about you. I needed someone sex positive. I needed somebody who engaged in porn. We both have very similar tastes in porn. I think one of my favorite dates we ever had is when we exchange each other's like our porn and we watch very similar things, you know what I mean? And so that was really exciting because it meant that, and we were right, we would have a very compatible intimacy expression. And so that was really nice. But I could see why that also would be not compatible with some people all the same. But I do, I'm sorry, the caller, I don't know his name, but to his
I
point,
mean, there's yeah.
I do think that intimacy is compared to traditional porn where you have to get a VHS tape and you have to go with that's very different. It's very far away. Even I don't watch traditional porn companies anymore, so I think that that's pretty clear that people want something a little bit more like individualistic. I want to know that the girls and the guys want to be there. I want to know that there's like a level of consent. Um, but I think that's like a good thing more than a bad thing. But I also know boundaries and I believe in consent as the foundation of how I interact with people. So I'm probably the best person to consume porn.
Okay.
So I
13,
do have.
one last thought because we do have a line, and then we'll let you
Mhm.
go.
You might as well just bring everyone in here. No, but so one thing I was kind of thinking about when we talked about the exploitation of OnlyFans and how it's kind of different than Twitch. I think Twitch exists neutrally, as in this is the content that you're going to be watching. But on OnlyFans, there's always an invitation of openness from the woman. Like if you read the posts that they make on Reddit or on Twitter or anywhere really, there's always an inviting saying that you can be with me, you can engage with me, you can't I think one problem I had with Not So Erudite, and I would love to talk to her about this right directly, is the idea that you can kind of just say directly, hey, this is the product, right? Girlfriend experience. But then forget that these are human beings interacting. And it isn't as simple as, hey, this is just a girlfriend experience. It is also like giving information that you probably shouldn't. Like as like a lot of women, they kind of overshare sometimes. And so that can really blur the lines between like
I love that
client
about women.
and between, supplier and client. So my question kind of is, I guess, to leave to chew on is why don't we look at how these women invite these men into these spaces if we're going to talk about exploitation? And that is, they are preying on men who don't have relationships or married men in sexless
Yeah, but they're
relationships
also,
in
but
general.
there's, I mean, this is a cycle. This is like the Ouroboros, where it's like,
Mhm.
yes, they're doing that, but also because they need something because it's resources they don't have, right? So it's this like predator prey, good guy, bad guy cycle. There is no bad guy, there is no good guy.
But
It's
then that
just
would
try
mean
to do
that
the best you
everyone.
can.
But see, so that's kind of my problem because that would mean we would just already answer the question. It is exploitation. Even the woman in question
Sure.
is being exploited too, right? Like she's the one
Yes.
who can be pushed into farther boundaries or, have her boundaries pushed and go into deeper and deeper stuff due to the wants and needs of the men she's trying to advertise to.
Sure.
Like there's lot. I think the nature, honestly, is that it is exploitative, and I think it probably should have just discussed that a lot more.
Okay. Well,
We should just
Xerxes,
kill
thank you for
everyone.
coming on. We might open it up as an open panel after, but for now we're just gonna do one-on-one call-in. So
I
I'll see
got
you
you.
later.
All right, my man.
I'll bring people on in the order I saw you arrive, which won't be
What a
perfect,
nice young
but that's
man.
what we're gonna do. I don't know if you saw his previous appearances on my panel. I'm not sure if you changed your mind or not. But
No, what is he like? Pro rape?
well,
What
his
would make me not like him?
his last debate was women lack honor, and he
I might
advocated.
agree with that.
Anyway, but maybe. But let's bring it on in order again. I saw you come in. It's not perfect, but we're gonna do our best.
I'm scared.
You're live. What you got?
Hello.
I hope your stuff's ready, because if it's not, we don't have a lot of time. So,
Oh,
well,
nice.
wonderful. You shot a shot.
Oh,
You're live. What you got?
Hello.
Hello. Hopefully my
Yes,
mic.
you are working. What you got? What do you got? What do you got for us?
Yeah, I was going to ask Ferry a question about like her 15-year-olds are dumb and stuff, but I suppose I could kind of ask maybe Lav or Brittany, because I think they talked about like banning porn and stuff. Like, what do you think would be an appropriate age for, I don't know, like adolescents to start viewing? Because obviously they're going to start viewing it regardless of like an age gate on a website or something. So I feel like, I don't know, like most guys probably.
Okay, maybe I'll ask it this way. So I first saw pornography when I was 11 years old. Do you guys think that's too young?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think that 11-year-olds have sexuality. I don't think that 11-year-olds are devoid of sexuality, but I think that a healthy 11-year-old sexuality is seeing a teacher you find is very attractive, or maybe an aunt that has very big breasts or something like that, like something that is very naturally piquing your curiosity, interest, rather than having a whole huge world of pornography at your fingertips, right? So like something simpler or something, freakier, because our sexualities are freaky. We're human. But the porn thing, I think, probably isn't appropriate until about 16.
So 16's your age. What do you think, Brittany? Was 11 too young? What age would not be too young?
I think I got to give a little bit of a blurry answer. I think everyone's journey is different, and I got into porn pretty young. And I don't know if that was good or bad for me, but I had such a positive experience with it. But I'm not sure I'd be comfortable advocating for the age. It was so young. And at the same time, I'm not going to say that it's the end of the world. I just think that.
Are you comfortable sharing how young? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was like 9, maybe 8 or 9. I was really young. Because the moment we got a computer in the home, the moment I got access to anything, and I got caught a couple of times and blamed it on my brothers. I'm so sorry. But I was so embarrassed as a little girl, but I'm so sexual. I'm so allosexual. I have pretty high sex drive. So I was always curious, and I was reading books on reproduction, and I was reading books on how to have a baby, and my mom wouldn't answer my questions. So I Googled, girl. I got on the internet. I don't even know what the internet was called then. What was it? AOL? I don't even know. But it was like my friends and I, for sure. I mean, at 15 years old, I was on like chat websites with adults, convincing them not to have affairs. I was like so autistically lecturing everybody. I'm very like curious and neurodivergent. So I think if I had kids, they would also be. So I think I'm just open to the fact that I want them to come to me and explain to me what they're going through so I can help and guide them and give them a good outcome, just because it can go bad so often without guidance. So I don't know if there's a good age to watch porn. I think there's more or less like it is what it is.
Does this answer your question, sir, dear caller?
Yeah, like broadly, I think maybe it could be like different for men and women, maybe, or culturally it's different, because obviously like across the world you see like different ages of consent, different laws for drinking. Like America, it's like 21. That's like the highest in the world, whereas like in Europe, most of Europe, it could be like 15, 16. Like you can see different rates.
What was the age of
development.
consent in Japan? Was 13 until like last month.
Yeah.
Pretty
Girl,
crazy.
Italy too is right across the waterway. It's like
I think
14.
that's too young. Maybe I'm old. Maybe I'm an old fuddy-duddy right winger, neocon or whatever. I don't.
No, you're
nothing
making
at
prescriptions
13.
based on the world that you live in. They live in a different world, so things are just different to them. They might be ready at 13.
To do what?
Who's to say?
Wait,
Like,
to
I
do
don't
what?
think-
With each
like-
other?
Oh,
To have sex with the
I don't know about
Like
that.
Fairy-
I
Fairy
don't
was
want to
saying
imagine
that
having
about-
kids doing stuff. So
Fairy was saying like, she's saying like 15-year-olds are really dumb, but like I think like people are mostly developed by around like they've gone through puberty at least, or at least by like 15, 16. So they probably like have the brain capacity, but not the experience. So it's
Yeah.
like you
definitely
need,
to have sex with each other, maybe not to
you
have
need to
sex
be like
with an adult.
exposed to experiences in like a safe way, and then you develop. You become smart through that. I don't think you're any less capable as a 15 or 16-year-old. You just don't have the experience yet. So I think that's all
Well,
I'll
thank
say.
you.
I'll let someone else come in.
Yeah, thank you for calling in, sir. 13 gang, really? No,
yeah, I'm like,
no.
Not to have sex with an adult, but you could be 13 and have sex with
I
another
would
13-year-old.
say that the dangers of sex, and there are dangers of having sex with people, like you can get pregnant if you're a woman, you can get STDs. There are so many emotional issues that might come from it as well. Like as you said, there is a kind like sex is fundamentally different, right, than other forms of intimacy. I
Sure.
agree with you on that. I think that there is a very good reason we don't let children engage in it even with each other, and I think 13 is just far too young.
No, I think that the age of consent in America should be 21. I'm like a progressive in that sense. I'm just saying, like, there's a way it's hard to imagine a world in which like a 13-year-old would be okay having that sex, because we live in the world that we do, where like in a place like in Palestine, getting married off at 15
yeah, but
is like
it doesn't
pretty normal.
bode well. My grandma was married at 12. It doesn't bode well. It's not great.
Sure, of course. And with the knowledge that we have, obviously, I just don't think that I don't think that every 13-year-old or 15-year-old that's married off is like deeply traumatized. It's just the way of their world. I think we should avoid stuff like that because there are obviously bad things that can happen.
Hello, dear caller. What is your question and or comment, apparently?
I was curious. I think porn should be restricted to a certain degree. I think, like how OnlyFans functions, to where you have to subscribe to certain things. I think that's how it should be for porn generally. I think it should be harder for children to reach. That's my thought process. Where I think like you can make whatever kind of porn you want, and just like with cigarettes or alcohol or any other bad thing that you can consume, you have to indulge in that stuff responsibly. I think one of the things that makes porn it will make it easier for society to and better for society to engage with it responsibly is one of the things that deters me from watching more porn than I actually do right now, is that most porn, like, you got to pay for it. And in my mind, I'm like, nah, that's cuck shit. I'm not like fucking buying porn. I'm not spending fucking money on shit that I don't really need. So I think if it's restricted in a way where you have to pay for it, like, most people will be like, oh, I don't really need porn. Like, I can actually just go out of my way. Like,
so you're against free porn?
I'm against free porn because I think it's like a lot easier nowadays to find stuff that you want, and I don't think it should be. I think it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of boring to me, where it's like you can get anything you want. I think you should be able to have that stuff, but you should pay a price for it. I think this will also help content creators make more money from the porn they produce. Sorry about
Perhaps. No, that's fine. Let's interrogate the lab. Free porn, yay or nay?
No, probably not. I think if only for the reason to keep it from children, like having to put like a debit card and an ID to access porn is probably a good idea.
Brittany?
I'm open to whatever's efficient. Obviously, I'm not sure what we can do, but I do think like we live in a reality where no matter how or what we put into effect, I think there's always going to be free something, access to something. Like, I don't know. I'm more of a Wild Wild West kind of girl. Like, it is what it is.
I think there's an argument to be made that it would be a limiting of free expression in a way, that if we like got rid of free porn. But I'd also argue like, well, if that was the case, if you made that argument, you'd have to say like that television shows or any other pieces of art that are made should be like free also, which I also don't think should be the case.
My problem with this take would be simply that if you put it behind strictly a monetary gate, all that really does is make sure that poor people don't get to consume as much porn, right?
Exactly.
And that
Oh
that
god,
might
and
be a
then they have
problem.
sex with each other more and breed more, and they're
Do
stranded on their
they?
resources. Jeez Louise.
Do they? I don't know.
I do think
About
that would
porn?
be I do think that would be an unfortunate side effect for like people that are in those kind of situations. But I also think in a way that like
You're willing to sacrifice support in this case. Fair
I'm
enough.
I'm willing to sacrifice. Like I recognize that it's probably like fucked in that circumstance, but I don't feel too bad because in the long grand scheme of things, I think like it would be a greater net good than it would be a bad. Um, yeah, that's pretty much my take.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling in, dear
Mhm.
caller.
Oh,
and-
you gotta you gotta you got to be careful. I don't know what your views are on platforming Thorpes, but one of them in the backstage, Ben Thorpe. So if you're gonna kick
He's
him out,
coming
kick
to
him out
accost
now.
me.
I'm
If
not.
he yells at me, I'll leave. He knows I hate him.
Okay,
He's
so
coming
he's
to talk to
backstage.
me.
Hold on, is there
I'm
a-
almost
is-
positive he's coming to talk to me.
Okay.
I'm not
Do either
sure
of you have a problem with having him on or no?
Not really. No.
If you have one, tell me, and I won't bring him on.
I'm not a fan. I think he's severely abusive and dangerous, but it's your panel. I'll be quiet.
Don't be. Okay. How about this?
I think it'd be
Bring him
funny.
on- We'll bring him on for a little, and if he's too much, I'll just kick him out. Is that good? And you can tell me if he's too much. Just DM me or I don't know. You say it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, well, just
Bye, Emery. Oh, he was about to say something. Oops. Oh, well. Sorry, Emery.
And don't
I'm
get to
sorry, I love you.
speak.
Okay, trial basis. What you
Hi,
got?
Ben.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi,
You're
Ben.
live.
Wait, what? Oh, I'm here. Okay, sorry, I lost it. Hey, what's happening? Okay, here I am. Hey, I just wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about this thing of exploitation. I really don't understand what you mean by exploitation. I understand exploitation of like people in third world countries who, you
Like
know,
a Peaky Blinder. What's happening?
I just woke up. I've been on a long road trip.
Nice.
But yeah. Like Lav, you said you're a survival sex worker. What are you talking about?
I was a survival sex worker.
Yeah, well, that's
So
the only way you could survive in America.
when I was 18, I had a felony charge on my record. I lost my job, and I
Yeah.
didn't have any way to make money. So it was the middle of December. I was living
you
out of my
would-
car.
You'd have died if you didn't do porn. No.
Well, I wouldn't have had any way to house myself during the winter.
Oh, well, there are agencies, of course.
Um,
Churches, charity. I mean, it's not.
maybe.
I understand in Bangladesh,
But I think there's also a level of pride. I think. I mean, obviously, it's not porn or die. It's a little more nuanced
not
than
in
that.
America.
Sure, it's a little more nuanced than that. But I think
There are
when
other
we
things
say
you could
survival sex work, it's
think.
like you have very limited options, and you're doing it out of a place of.
Yeah,
of
it was a
need.
better. You felt it was a better option than your other options. But I mean, there are other things you could do at age 18 as a beautiful young woman in America.
Okay. Let me
Okay.
ask you this, Ben.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. I don't see the exploitation either way. Like,
No, you don't think that sex work is exploitative in either direction?
I actually don't think it's work, to be honest. I do think I don't even know what
Do you
you're
think
talking.
pornography or OnlyFans models, whether you want to call them work or not, do you think
It's degrading. It's degrading activity. If you're talking about real pornography, yeah, it's degrading. But
No,
I
I'm
mean, if
asking,
you're talking about
do you think it's
pics, I don't know.
exploitative?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm asking, do you think it's exploitative? Do you think that this kind of behavior is exploiting in either direction? Whether
I think it's degrading, but I think you're degrading yourself. Like prostitutes in America are like, I think people who have like kind of a death wish. No one would go into that work unless they were crazy to get into a car with a random stranger to have sex with them. It's crazy. You have to be out of your mind.
it'd have to be pretty desperate, no?
No, you have to be crazy.
Well,
In America,
desperation can
some
come from
countries,
being
I
crazy.
believe that's true. I believe that's true in some places. Like the desperation is to a level where, like, okay, yeah, but you have to be out of your mind to get in a car with a total stranger, and and put yourself in that situation. Like I'm saying, there's something really wrong with a person like that.
Okay, any
Yeah,
responses for this?
prostitutes are amongst the most mentally ill.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised to believe that a lot of people in sex work are very mentally ill.
I'm not
So,
surprised at all. That's why it's not work. I mean, OSHA doesn't regulate sex work, right? It's criminal activity. It's
Okay.
right. I mean, it's
Any
like on the
Hmm.
edges. right? No one would
Sure.
want their kids to engage and say like, "Oh, she's a sex worker." Nobody would want that.
Yeah, I don't think sex work is work either, but that's because
Yeah,
I think
but
that
it's
payment for sex is rape.
degradation. But like, who's to blame in America? Like, I don't know. Everybody who does it is to blame. But I think there are a
What
lot
about
of
the consumers? Do the consumers get any blame?
yeah, you shouldn't look at that stuff.
Yeah, you create the market, of
But
course.
I would say one thing about OnlyFans, right? And I like because I grew up in the age of like internet porn. I was magazine porn, but then like internet porn. But I think a lot of people on OnlyFans.
You grew up with people drawing porn on caves, so don't lie. First of all, you're 700 years old.
Well, you came into my Discord and gave me quite a show. I enjoyed that. It was very 2023.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Can I just make one point?
Well,
Okay.
yes,
So
but we
I
have a
think
line.
in a lot of ways, OnlyFans is like usually men, okay, lonely men who actually want a little bit more than just the pictures to get off to, and they want some kind of relationship. Actually, that's a step in the right direction. And I have suggested, and I'm Catholic. I don't believe in premarital sex. I don't believe in any of this stuff. But I think for a lot of these like super autistic kids that I've run into, like these Zoomers, like real, like basement dwelling school shooter, like crazy types, I think that
son.
young women should be hired by the government to help them to relieve themselves and have some relationality. I think it should be sort of like
Right.
So government
I'm not talking about
mandated.
government, but the church. I think the church
Yeah.
The
should
church.
help on ramp these guys out of the
There should be
basement.
Liliths. There should be Jezebels.
Okay.
Maybe like therapy or something.
Just like,
that.
have you seen Handmaid's Tale? It's actually just like that. Good
Ben,
job, Ben.
Thank you for calling in. I will see
Thank
you.
you.
The church should mandate sex
Complimentary
workers
rape.
for lonely basement dwelling young men.
Yeah.
That is a take.
Yeah. It's
Spit out
it's a
that number.
Catholic take, apparently.
You okay, Brittany? Everything good?
Bro, every time he says I'm Catholic, I want to fucking.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Okay. Next caller, Smith. What you got?
Hello, Smith.
Hi, Smith.
Yo, hold on. Put this. Yeah. So, I wish that everybody else was like on the panel because there was like a lot more like attitudes, but in general, I feel like people are so eager to blame either the porn stars or the people consuming, and nobody's really talking about the platforms that create them. I like if you're saying like the consumers create the market, I think the platforms create the market even more. I mean, that's not like a literal the way they use market in like a business school, but I mean, if OnlyFans wasn't there, OnlyFans wouldn't exist, and maybe we should like hold these companies more critical and hold them to a higher moral
Do you think
standard.
OnlyFans should exist, Smith?
As it is, no.
So you would, as it is, you would mandate it to be removed.
I agree with what Lav said actually about like getting rid of the private messages and stuff, and also some of the incentive structures where they have like if you get like one of your friends to make an OnlyFans account, and then the more money that they make, then you start getting a cut for a while. The mentoring ship incentives, that's fucked up.
That's super fucked up.
I think I'm too
Brittany?
conservative for this conversation, bro. Free market, baby.
So you
It-
have no
it's-
problem with the just real quick, Brittany, you would have no problem with the referral system that OnlyFans.
I don't
To be clear, I'm not familiar with the details on the referral system. Can either of you explain this?
Yeah,
You make a
I'm not either, I
portion-
guess. But go ahead.
You are incentivized through money to get your friends or some other people to join the platform. So
Look,
you
I'm very
make-
incentivized about money. I work 7 days a week, girl. I'm all about that money. So
Sure, but you're also you're coming from a place of privilege. Like if I think that obviously there are women who are not as smart as you, who are not as do not have relationships with their parents, who obviously don't know aren't self-introspective enough to do sex work. I think that you need to be very introspective to not let it kill you to do sex work.
They're
A
creating
lot
an
of women are
incentive.
doing it.
It's like
So
it's like a pyramid scheme Andrew Tate thing.
I don't know.
Sort of.
No
it's like an
offense.
NFT. It's exactly like NFTs.
No,
it's exactly like NFTs.
I don't know if
Wait,
I don't know if that's the
I don't
case. I
understand
don't know if
that.
I'm just too old, but I feel like I lived through a generation of people who fought for the sake of work, and women will make mistakes. People will make mistakes. Young people will make mistakes. But also, like, if we're going to let men sign up for the military to die, I think women can handle being naked. Like, I just feel like it's a part of growing up. It's a part of being 18. Yes, it's not perfect. People will get hurt. But as a species, we like hurt and then we learn from that hurt and we get better. So hopefully you would come to me as a mentor and I would tell you, maybe you're not ready to be naked in the world. Or maybe you're ready to be naked in a nudist community where there's not money involved. Or maybe you should do BDSM. Or maybe you should do something else. But I feel like at the end of the day, we're living in a world where 18 is the legal age and we need to get people ready to be 18. And whether or not they have parents, that sucks. But that's also why we need to be there for them if we can be, if you have the spoons. And then accept the fact that some people, that's like their story. That's their anime story, bro. That's canon.
I wasn't talking about
Sure.
like not teaching kids about like porn or sex or like teaching like kids these kind of things. I was just saying that the way the website is structured, like it's called the mentorship incentive or something. It's about mentorship, like, because you get someone else into it, and then for like a while, the better they do, the more money you make a cut, like a 10% cut of what they do. So it incentivizes like a bigger creator to start mentoring smaller people and like looking for talent, and it's like encouraging you to find and exploit younger women.
I think it encourages bad people to do that. So
Okay. Well, Smeth, I'm not familiar enough with the details of this. I guess would you have the same problem with a company in general doing this? Any corporation that has a recruitment bonus, like if you find talent and then you can recruit them for the corporation, you get a bonus of some sort. Do you think that's equally bad or the similar nature?
No, but that's not
What's the
equally bad.
difference?
But it is still very bad when a company does something like you get a 10% cut of their income. Like that's a really predatory like business
Well, you don't
practice.
take it from their income, right? Like, so if you scout talent and you find someone that has the right credentials to fill a space in a company, right? You would get some sort of bonus, right? Depending on how much or how valuable that employee would be. And you don't think that's predatory, but you think that the OnlyFans model is predatory?
No, the percentage of income thing is the predatory thing.
Why?
Because like you are literally like I don't know, percentage of income is something that I feel that is almost always predatory thing to do. It's always like a trick. Like 10%. I don't know. Like there are code camps that do this where like if you don't have enough money to pay for the code camp, for if you get a job making over 80K after you get this for in the rest of your
It's also
life,
it's the
then like
nature of the
30%
job.
of your income, 30% of your income you give to them for like 5 years. And like what that equates to is like 20, 30 times more what you would have paid in the first place when you're making that much money. And so you get the job, but like they really like suck the blood out of you, and I just
Okay.
feel like that type of thing is like fucked
Sucky.
up.
Lav, what did you have to say before?
I think it's the nature of the job also. If you have an internship in which you make an extra dollar or two every new intern you bring in, it's, it's less serious, but you're basically signing on, especially if they're young women who might not understand the implications of having their naked body online forever, or might not have the self-introspection, like I said, like to deal with something like sex work, which is a hard job.
I mean,
It
more
is an
than that,
emotionally
though,
hard job.
what about like teenagers with phones? Like, I don't think I'm going to if I have a kid, they're not getting no phone because I'm not going to have their naked body on the internet because kids be wild out here posting nudes, right? Like, I don't know
agree
if you
with
guys
that,
saw
yeah.
that. Okay, when that happened in California, like, and they had to make it like child porn, which mean teenagers were being prosecuted for sharing their own photos. Like, it was insane, again, we tried to like help society, but we do not harm reduce. This is not harm reduction, putting permanent records on children because they exchange their own photos, right? But we need to be aware that the world isn't perfect and not everyone has a good parent. You can't again, I love Kyla's like version of like a liberal society helps like the most weak. I think a liberal society should encourage the most weak to be better by helping them have the tools. But like some people will make bad decisions on purpose. And we have to let people do that. Like we have to accept that that's what people are going to do. Some people are going to not take your advice and they're going to regret it. Regret is not a sin. You're allowed to regret the things you've done and you're allowed to learn from that regret.
Okay, Smith, thank you for coming on. We'll see you later,
Alright.
buddy. Okay, we're gonna try this guy again. One more chance, friend.
Hello.
Hello.
Anything? Hello? Hello? Bueller? Yeah. 3, 5, 4, 3.
Oh,
Oh, there he is.
There we go. What you got?
He's
What you got for
alive.
us?
hello.
Hi.
Hi.
What you got?
Hi, hi guys.
Hi.
Trying to get in, but I have no idea how the system works. It's
You are
so
in. You
complicated.
are live. And if you have a question or a comment, we would love to hear from you. What you got?
I have no idea. I'm absolutely don't want to, you know, break your show or whatever. So I'm super like
You're not breaking your show. I specifically
cautious.
invited you into. Give us what you got. Anything?
Okay, guys.
Okay. Friend,
Well, thank you, guys.
thank you. I know.
Classy.
Dang, I don't understand. Look, you won't break my show. I'm specifically inviting you in. Just tell me what you want to say.
He's struggling. He's struggling.
I know he's having it. We'll try again later, maybe. If I have the spoons for it. Oh God, I'm using spoons again. It's Brittany. You're rubbing off on me. This is.
Oh, I love
working.
rubbing on other content creators.
God damn it,
Hey,
Admiral. What you got?
hey, how you doing? You doing all right? So first, I want to ask after that one guy came through, y'all fans of the church-regulated sexual communism? Is that something y'all think we should implement?
No.
No, not fans. All right, cool. Just making sure. All right. So earlier, I don't remember which one of y'all said this, but y'all said that y'all mentioned sex work doesn't count as work. All right. So I guess what is y'all's threshold of this, right? So if someone coded an AI to write responses for OF workers, or an OF worker coded her own AI to respond, does that constitute real work? Because I feel like that still counts as sex work to some degree, right?
I mean, anything is work. You like you folding your laundry could be work. It's a matter of what you think should be. Like I don't think that, especially like prostitution, I don't think it should be a job to be a prostitute. I don't think that consent is money. So I don't think that that job should exist. I think that it's
I don't
criminal.
understand how you could have any job. Like, I don't understand.
So if you're paying the AI money, right? So the guy codes the money, right? Are you saying that they can't consent to an AI taking their money?
Well, I've just said prostitution is so sex work is like a bunch of different things. I think that when I think of sex work, I think of like the obvious prostitution, but with OnlyFans, I think like marketing is a job. So you marketing your OnlyFans is sex work technically.
Wait, you don't
I
think
don't
people
really
should
care
be
about
like
the
sex workers like they are in Vegas?
no, I don't think that money is consent.
Oh, well,
I think if you want to have sex with someone, you can just have sex with someone. I don't think that money is consent.
How is it not consent though? So if like wouldn't that be a contract? You're like contracting them for a service. Isn't the whole definition of consent just a form of contract?
There's no way to know whether or not why the person.
well,
I
you would
think it's
never be able to know
coercive,
what anyone's
basically.
consent is then, Lav. Like, money aside, like, I know too many
Sure, but there are
in-person
different
sex
levels.
workers.
There are levels to consent. Also,
Yeah, but like you're talking about grown-ass people who have agency over their body deciding to do what they want. It's like saying people can't consent to anything. Like, how do we know people can consent to anything?
well, you don't. But I think like let's see, if money is a useful bartering tool, or if sex work is going to be part of the market, part of the economy, then it needs to be tradable by money, or it needs to be tradable by goods, right? So I think of, if you are a woman and your landlord raises your rent, right? If your landlord raises your rent and says, you're going to be out by tomorrow unless you get me this money or you fuck me. She is consenting. Well, she's like, well, I don't have the money, so I'm consenting because I want to keep my place to fuck you. But the implication there is that we probably don't want to make it okay for landlords to barter sex for rent, right? So it's there's obviously something different with sex and money because it's not a controlled good. It shouldn't be a controlled good. So
Well, it is like a controlled good in some places. It's like legal and on the books. So
Yeah, I don't think it should be.
I can understand that perspective of it shouldn't be, but it is,
Yeah.
and it's working for a lot of people. And so to like take that away from
Sure.
them feels pretty cruel and unnecessary.
Well, we take selling drugs away from people.
I don't think we
also,
should. I
because
think people should have the right to sell drugs.
yeah, so I do. So I think this is just like a, our own.
I wish
personal
Croatia
philosophy
would
thing.
sell drugs to me.
Yeah, I just don't think that people should be able to sell drugs legally either. So
Like not even marijuana, girl. For my chronic, I have
so
fibromyalgia. I have
Yeah,
pain.
well, you say
hold on.
people, what about like the government selling drugs to you?
I feel like that. I mean, it might be better to have mandated like certain regulations around it, right? Rather than privatized regulations around like marijuana. But yeah, with marijuana, I think it's different, right? Like, I don't think that marijuana is obviously not like addictive. If you have an addictive personality, if you have
but
compulsion,
marijuana has a
maybe.
lot of consequences.
But I'm saying like opium, probably should not be. Like,
Again, we can
illegally,
talk
or
about
should not
harm
be sold by-
reduction, but again, like I'm very pretty. Prisons have too many people in them for very silly reasons. So if we
You're
want,
right. We should start killing them.
What? Okay, Lab's just being Lab. Okay, Gibbs, do you have any other questions or comments before we let you go?
Yeah, I had one more. So I mentioned somebody earlier talk about the age, the average age. I don't remember who it was, but I said the average age was about 16 or something would be a good age to consume porn. I kind of had a question about that. So the average life expectancy for thousands of years is like 33, right? And then we kind of start getting more civilized. And then for about probably pre 200 years ago, the average person lived in a one-bedroom domicile with their family, and multiple people were having sex under the same roof, possibly while like their kids were there. So would y'all say that it's more damaging for someone to sit there and be in the same domicile as their parents, seeing them have sex, producing their future siblings, or to watch porn at 16? Which are before 16? Which one's worse?
So I don't think it's just watching like one porn movie, right? Like I think that it's actually very healthy to like have like a VCR cassette tape of like your favorite porn and go back and watch it if it's if it's healthy, passionate sex between two lovers, right? Or watching your parents, I don't think is like especially traumatic, even though it's uncomfortable. But I think it's about having access to boundless pornography, which is a problem.
What if your
Because
parents
that
are like
messes with your
rabid
brain.
animals? Like what if they're like rabbits, fucking all the time?
Well, you're still watching just two people have sex, which is different than watching a ton of people have a ton of different sex.
Okay. Brittany, any thoughts before we let him go?
I don't even want to imagine my parents having sex. God bless them for having 10
No.
kids. Good for them.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you,
Gibbs?
Wick. It's fun.
No, thanks. Thanks for being. What you got?
Nothing like it comes to money.
Ditto, do your live.
Sexy Ditto. That's so cute.
Yeah,
Yes, what's up, guys? How are you?
Hi, what you got for us?
Yeah, so my opinion regarding this subject is that I think that we live today in a society that is materialistic, and it became very hard for people to distinguish what is morally right and wrong, because for most people nowadays they determine something to be morally wrong just because they see the direct negative side effects of it. But when it comes to pornography, it's very difficult to see that. It's not like being an addict to heroin, for example. After some weeks, you're gonna notice the difference clearly in your physical body. But when it comes to pornography, it's a mental issue that the negative side effects are psychological, and sometimes it's very hard to see them.
Thoughts?
But of course, when you see, like, when you start when it becomes an addiction and you like you start I don't know, losing friends or not going to work. Hello?
Yeah, we're here. I don't know of any situations where people are refusing to go to work because they've seen a lot of porn. I don't know.
Well, this is what I was talking about earlier was
but that-
incentive
sorry.
structure or social structure and incentive structure. So your favorite porn star that you pay for doesn't care if you're showering, doesn't care if you're taking care of your body, doesn't care if you have a high paying job, doesn't care if you have a challenging job. These are all things that your wife would care about. So if you're someone who is more prone to depression or just lazier, and there's this thing that you can do where you don't have to worry about all of those things, your incentive structure changes.
Any thoughts on this?
Just by the way, when you say you, it's not me. I don't have this addiction. I was just talking to someone who had this addiction on the chat.
I think in an ideal world, like obviously your wife would care about you, but with the rate of a divorce, apparently someone's not caring about somebody. I would just say that it's okay to go to a sex worker for intimacy or for, very casual, just like looking at people. Remember, not everybody on OF is like doing what you guys think they're doing. Some people are just making cute photo shoots. Like Lana Rhoades, one of the top corn stars of the world, literally came back to OF to do like really classy nudes. And I think that's beautiful. And I like that she's having a new relationship with it since she had a very destructive one. And I think that's good to acknowledge that she's allowed to come back and do it different. So again, some people just like to look at, like, do you ever go to a Seattle Erotic Arts Festival, like nude events, like paintings for thousands of dollars, photography for thousands of dollars of erotic art? It's not corn, it's art. Like, but also corn can be art, So again, like how you're engaging with the material is up to your intentions as much as anybody else selling it. You know what I mean?
Just because
I
I'm
don't think
someone.
it's art. In my opinion, I don't think it's art. I think it's a cope to say it's art. You can make anything art just to. It's like a joker. It's like an excuse to
I
say
think
that
that's
it's
a less.
not
I
art.
think that's a less important point because it's so subjective. Who cares about what art is? But what I was
But
going to say is, sorry, I'm more important than you, Ditto. What I was
yeah, no
going
problem.
to say is that I think sexuality is like very important to people. I love posting nude photos. I love people seeing my breasts. I'm an exhibitionist. I like it. I get something from it. I got a lot of my sexuality from having an OnlyFans, but I think that accepting money from it is unethical. So I've decided to just do that shit for free. The problem is, like, you can technically do all that you want like that for free. I don't think that that's wrong. I don't think that that's bad. I think that's positive. Be naked in front of the world. I don't care. But doing the payment thing, I think, is just like a very unrealistic. I mean, I think that we're all unfortunately about to turn into like hypergamous, like Miami daters. Like, that's my fear, right? Is that we're all just going to be like, you pay for a girlfriend in real life now. So now it's not just OnlyFans. Now you pay for, like, the average woman now wants this money, this payment for her role, her sexual role, which is I don't know. I don't know
I
if
mean,
that's
I
moving
hate
in the
to
right
say
direction.
it, but like when you have traditional gender role relationships and a lot of women do choose men to be providers, they are kind of saying, I'll exchange sex and to take care of your children for marriage. Some of them. That's why I think they
Sure.
led to divorce.
Privatized ownership, yeah.
Right. And I think that's why it led to divorce. Look, you're right to say, like, I always say this with BDSM. It's better to do free, consensual, intimate BDSM with people than to pay for a sex worker in which you only see BDSM through the sex worker, because BDSM
Yeah.
can be done through consent as much as, like, it's all consent, obviously. But if your BDSM is best had through a sex worker, do it that way. It's about what's best for you. For me, I'm a lifestyler. So I just like to do BDSM with people I love, right? But if I needed to hire a sex worker to do a specific scene, like someone's really good at throwing whips, I would do that. And I think I should pay them for their time because they're doing labor for me. And I want to show them respect, right? It's about respect and dignity. We exchange money in the world. It's a construct and we're here for it. So out of dignity, for people's time, I really appreciate when my callers pay me or pay me, I have an extra fee, of course, if they go over their limit. I appreciate when they do that because they're saying, I respect your time, right? Obviously, my callers are non-sex work, but like still, it's like out of respect. It's just a respect thing. It's like, I respect your time, whether you're a sex worker or a doctor or somebody else. Like, we pay people for their time. That's what we do. We should pay people for their labor.
I guess it's just your virtue and your morality around sex. Like, I would never want to do that. I think that sex should be
Well, you
sacred.
can't
I think
say
sex is and should stay sacred.
The problem is, Lav, and this
But
is the problem I
away
have with
from
Andrew Tate as
capitalism.
well.
Yeah.
This is the problem I have with Andrew Tate as well. You will make money off sex work, become very rich, and then decide it's bad for the world while you're still using and utilizing the money you made off of an industry you claim was so bad. And that's the problem I'll always have is like, oh, so after you're rich, then you'll complain it's not good. It feels like a grift. I'm not saying it's a grift for you, but I know for Andrew Tate, it definitely feels like a grift, right?
One, I don't have any of them. I have maybe.
You spent $1 million. Did you not have an accountant? Do you not pay? Did it all
I
go to
paid
tax?
Firstly, yes, it all went to tax. Second, I have multiple people to pay for. I'm not the only person that I pay for. Well, I am now because I can't afford to pay for anyone else. But so
sorry to hear that.
I've given a lot of it away, especially during the Black Lives Matter protests. I gave away an exuberant amount of money.
Okay, so
I
you
put
feel
those
like you
women in
paid
their
back.
fucking mansions
You
myself.
feel like you paid back your
Can I tell you?
communities then for making money off the backs of like.
Yeah, I
these-
mean, I feel immense guilt, and so I've given a lot of the money away. So
Okay,
it's not just like
that's
a
fair.
grift, and yeah, and I'm certainly not. But I obviously understand. Like, of course, I'm coming from a position of privilege. A lot of women who go to OnlyFans never make the amount of money I do. So
Yeah.
obviously, I'm very aware of the
I would
place
love to
that I
compete with
take
Lab though
up.
if anyone wants to contribute to that. No, but like literally Lab, listen, like seriously, like in the best way possible. I think it's beautiful you do nude work for free. I think that's great that you're doing it on your time. I
Sure.
just think it's interesting that money is the thing that you can't see being kind of neutral in of itself. I know it's not neutral, but I
I
also
guess
don't
it's just
think
anti-capitalist. I
Oh,
think that there are
maybe.
certain places where
Maybe.
money should not go.
Do you have
like
a job? Do you have to work?
family. I do work, but I don't make money from my work. It's all
I think
philanthropy.
I think that that's really hard because again, like for people who like to be naked, it's like, oh, and I can make money off doing something
Sure,
I
of course.
love.
Of course. Yeah, of
Well,
course.
as
No, I
a
understand.
yeah,
I
as
understand being a sex
survival
worker.
streamer, as a survival streamer, I do all the money that I make goes to me and to keeping a
Yeah.
roof over my head and to feeding myself and to getting, things done. Ditto, did you have anything else before we let you go?
I mean, I want to say, like, the first thing I started with when I came in is the issue of morality. It seems to me that most of this conversation was about different types of sexual transactions, but most of them are like you have a choice between the lesser of two evils.
So you
What
think
happened to
sexual
objective
transactions are
morality?
just immoral?
Most of the types of transactions that we talked about in this conversation are immoral, and we know it. We just try to hide it under the curtain of freedom. Of everybody has the freedom to do whatever he wants to do, but we tend to not forget, but we are willfully blind to objective morality. We know that
Oh,
there is
geez.
objective morality and there is harm that is coming from these types of activity. Not
Are they going
maybe
to
that.
hell?
What?
Are they going to hell for doing sex work?
I'm not talking about hell or heaven. I'm talking about the harm that is causing to society in
But are
general. Because, of course, those types of transactions are harmful to society. We described many of them during this conversation. But
Well, okay, so
even those that appear to be harmless are indeed not harmless, because it's like selling drugs that are highly addictive, but they are not very damaging to your body in a short term. But in a long term, they will be harmful to your social life and to your family and to your
Sure.
goals.
Sure. Like, I think ultimately what the place that I'm arguing from is that my values and virtues are family, simple life, love, modesty to some extent, right? I'm sort of in a modernity, sort of conservative, like middle ground. But I think obviously, like, we know that it's harder for sex workers to find husbands. We know it's harder for them to find husbands that will allow them to. I mean, I am in like we said previously. I think I am in a specifically privileged position in which I found a husband to where I don't have to work. Right? I think it's hard. I love that structure though for women staying home and being mothers. I'm very conservative in that way. Men going out to work, bringing home the bacon. I think that is what works for a society. It's what has worked for society for hundreds, thousands of years. I think that women are happier that way. Men are happier that way. Generally, for the most part. Obviously, there are outliers. But if we want to live in a world like that, I think that sex work degrades that and makes it sort of impossible. Especially for
But
those
again,
women who want husbands, who want to take care of them, and those
again,
things.
I agree with you on that. But again, you brought up a negative outcome that is only affecting the person, because a sex worker is like, if you talk to her about the question of the morality of her actions, she will bring these types of arguments, like not being able to find a good husband. That's the cause of the stigma that comes with sex work. But how about the negative outcome that is affecting the whole of society, like the reduction of the number of marriages, the increase
I think
of
Lab
divorces, etc.
agrees with you.
Yeah, I'm sure she agrees with me if she's traditional or if she has traditional values. But a lot of time we focus on what might harm the person individually, but we forget about what might harm society in general. And this was obvious to older generations.
I've
That's why
been
it was
saying this,
obvious.
Ditto. Do you just not hear me because I'm a woman?
Ditto.
No,
Did we
no, I
love
didn't
you?
say that.
We got a line.
Sorry.
I will see you later.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought he's just echoing your points. We have time for maybe 2 more callers. I'll choose the cutest, and Lactoid and Layla. That's who we're gonna bring on.
Nice.
Lactoid, you're first. What you got?
Hey, what's up, Wick? How you doing? Hello.
Long time no see. What do you got for the show here?
Yeah, so I just want to make the argument that actually sex workers are the exploitators, and that Johns or people who consume sex work are the exploited.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the only reason why we don't see it this way is because of sort of like paternalistic sexism of like women can do no wrong kind of way of looking at things. I think sex workers are very comparable to drug dealers or casino owners, might be even like a better example, right? Like you're sort
So
of preying on
Brittany and
the
formerly Lav are drug dealers, is what you're saying.
or casino owners, absolutely, right? Because when you look at like the actual, they compare
Slot
almost one to
machines.
one. Exactly, right? They compare almost one to one, right? The
They
idea is
compare
you-
almost one to one, except for the
Yeah.
fact that there is a cultural subset for women, which is that you will be the like this sexy object in society. So you're almost groomed to an extent to be this like hypersexualized, hyper submissive woman for society, for the men in your life, in a way that drug dealers are not groomed to be drug dealers.
I don't think this is true at all. A lot of drug dealers grow up in
I don't care what you
environments.
say.
That's fine. A lot of drug dealers grow up in environments where they feel like drug dealing is the only way they get to survive, and they make a lot of excuses, and they talk about a lot of reasons why they feel like they have to drug deal. This is true with most industries that have negative impacts. People always find ways to
Sure,
justify
but I'm
it
not
to
talking.
themselves.
I'm not talking about what they feel like. I'm talking about how. I mean, do you not think that there is a difference in the sexes and how we're seen, our different gender roles, our place in society?
Well, obviously, this is why I started off by saying that the only reason why we treat women differently is because of this paternalistic sexism, right? Like, for example,
Yeah,
drug
creates
dealers.
the problem, and then you
drug
create
dealers
the
for-
villains.
ho-
You
hold on,
create the villains.
For example, like drug dealers oftentimes grow up in like broken homes, broken environments and a lot of their role models are, drug dealers or people who glorify drug dealing. Of course, like they're going to feel like compelled to enter into drug dealing, especially when they have economic pressures on them as well. But again, the principle remains the same. Like you have a provider who's weaponizing the reward chemicals in someone else's brain against them and using that to extort money out of them, right? So casino owners will do this when it comes to setting up gambling machines. Like you're abusing the reward pathway in order to soak up their money. Tobacco farmers do the same thing. Drug dealers do the same thing. And sex workers do the same thing, because what you're doing is you have a man, right? Usually, if we're being honest here, who has obviously like chemicals in the brain that are reward pathways that are generated through sexual intercourse or sexuality. And you put out content aimed mostly at abusing that in order to make money. So you can do this either through direct sex work, like having sex with them, or things like OnlyFans, right? Where you put
Lactoid,
out
women
pictures in
didn't
order
create
to like.
this market.
It doesn't matter. Most drug
Yes,
dealers
it
didn't
does
create the
matter.
market they're involved with either.
Yeah, yes, they do. They create the market. Yes, they do. They get
Well,
you
of
addicted
course,
to
sex
drugs to
workers
sell you more
create a
drugs.
market. Wait, hold on. You're telling me that like people who post like naked photos on the internet are not creating a market to some degree?
No, the market. What
That's
do you know?
crazy. That's
No, the fact that
crazy.
men want to have sex with women and they will go to any length to do it, to see them naked. No, that's not the same
Yeah,
thing. No.
they're abusing. I don't disagree that they're like there's something again. The reward pathways are sort of biologically inbuilt.
Now,
But
I
when
will,
you're
I
when you're a
will, I
drug
will
dealer,
agree
you're
with you that
also
we are
when you're a drug
both the
dealer-
problem.
No,
But for you to set
drug-
aside that women are that the sex workers are the problem is ridiculous, and
No,
you're
no,
hoping.
they're mostly the problem. The point I'm trying to
No.
make, is that the only reason why we see them as the victims is because women. Like it's quite literally just paternalistic sexism. Women can do no wrong.
Can you
When-
say
if
that
they
again?
were, if they were a
Women.
women. If they were a fucking casino owner, if they were a drug dealer, if they were any other, if they were any other profession who weaponized someone's brain reward pathways against them in order to get money out of them, we would obviously consider them to be more exploitative than the reverse. But in this case, we don't do that because of paternalistic sexism.
I want to hear what Brittany has to think about this.
So I'm pretty like anti-gambling. I think it's bad, and I'm not a fan that we do it, but obviously I'm pro freedom, so you know. I think it is bad because you're like it plays into what you've just said. I think that again, OnlyFans and sex work, I think, is a very nuanced subject because you can engage with it in multitude of ways, unlike things like gambling. I actually think you can engage with it in a much more I have a lived experience. I've read too many books on like the history of porn and erotic art, and I just know that communities around the world, like internationally, are engaging with this in a completely different way. I think normies in the general, you're right, are engaging with it in an incredibly toxic way, and I would love for them to be a little bit more weird. So they can be a little bit more consent based, a little bit more mental health aware, and a little bit more considerate. But just because basic normal people and the general public are failing themselves doesn't mean the rest of us are.
I guess I'm confused. I'm a little bit confused as to the point, right? Would you agree that like most people who go to a casino are probably not gambling addicts, right?
If they're
You'd agree
going
with
every
that.
week, I would argue that, but sure. If they're going in general, no.
Yeah, and so like, although it might be true that like, as long as it's not dramatically impacting on their life, that perhaps they're not addicts to the same degree, but like casino owners tend to like the way they make money, the whole business is, and
Just
this is why
say
we
it,
don't.
Jews.
This is
Just say
why
it.
we don't. This is why we don't let children into casinos, just like we shouldn't let children get involved with sex work, right? Obviously, the same concepts apply, which is that the whole like it's inherently predatory, right? The idea is you have people coming in and they have these reward pathways that you know about, these biological reward pathways, and you can abuse that. You can like activate it to make them feel like they're getting rewarded when in reality there's no reward. It's actually hurting them, right? There's actually a detriment to their health or their money or et cetera, et cetera. And then this creates an addictive behavior, or can create an addictive behavior that keeps them coming back over and over again. This applies to both an OnlyFans model and it applies to a casino owner. or
It
a
doesn't
drug
apply
dealer.
to the OnlyFans model. It applies more to fast food chains because of the sugar they put
that
into our
too.
foods. But OnlyFans models aren't like a conglomerate. You're thinking of them as like, think of me. Like you're talking about me. I'm a person. I'm just a girl in my apartment
Drug
posting some
dealers are
nudes.
people.
What? What are people?
Drug dealers are also people.
I
with their
believe in
own
drug
stories and
dealing.
their own
I'm a
struggles.
drug user. I believe there should be drug dealers in the world that are ethical. I think you should be able to sell drugs ethically.
Okay, that's
Right? I believe in
fine. That's
ethical
fine.
sex work, ethical
Okay.
gambling, meaning you know you're going to lose, but you're going to have fun. I think we should be ethical about how we make food in America. I think we should be ethical about how we do things. I'm not going to settle on, well, humans are never going to get there, so we should punish the good people. Don't punish the good people because the rest of you suck. Some of us are really trying here. And I feel like the rest of you are giving up, and I'm over it.
So just to be clear, right? I am a base
Clear real
libertarian.
quick, then
I'm a-
Lab
yep,
can
I'm
respond,
a-
and we're gonna let.
I'm a
get to
base
Lab first.
libertarian. I'm not saying that we should ban any of this shit. Okay, people should probably be allowed to destroy.
You just want to
themselves.
complain.
Yeah, obviously, I just want to complain
Yeah,
and socially chastise people who exploit other people.
It's a very
Yes, we shouldn't
estrogenic
exploit
trait.
let me
people. I
let,
agree
let
with
the,
you.
yeah. So let you right, but like here's the problem. Again, it's inherently exploitative because at least under my definition of exploitation, right? Under my definition of exploitation, it's whenever you weaponize somebody's circumstances against them in a way that's not actually beneficial for their
Okay.
overall well-being.
I like
Lactoid,
that.
you
I
silly
agree with
goose.
that.
Lactoid, you
Yes,
silly goose. Let me
that's sex work.
let me
That's
use
drug
That's
dealing.
not
your
sex work, period.
most of
That's
it.
just
let me
so
use
not.
your
That's like saying all
argument
religion is a
against
cult.
you.
Like, bro, where's the nuance,
It is
bro?
a cult.
Where is the nuance,
True.
my bro?
Let me use
It's all a
Lactoid.
cult.
Let me use your argument against you. One, you want to take the infantilization away from women and put it on men. Okay, for the same reasons you talk about how sex work is exploitative to men, biologically it is also exploitative to women. Women want to be loved. They want to feel valued. They want to feel desired. This is biological in us, right? So if you give an incentive structure of where you can also get money from this and you create the market, you're doing just as much fucking abuse, boyo. Okay, so
Yeah,
it's
I
this
don't think this is
cycle.
cope.
It's this circular. No, you're coping. Unfortunately,
No, this is
if you want to
absolutely.
infantilize men
You,
and
think
say that they don't have the
hookers love their
agency,
Johns?
do you
You
know
think
how
hookers
easy
love
it
their
is?
Johns? Come
You
on.
okay? This is
Maybe
another
they
thing.
love their pimps, and I agree.
You
Pimps
need
are
money to
exploiting them, for
survive.
sure.
You don't need sex to survive. If you want to infantilize men who are
Whoa,
going to,
speak for yourself.
Jesus
You
Christ.
also don't need heroin to survive, but a lot of people get hooked on that too.
True. Okay, but you can infantilize men all you want, and that's fine. I think that everyone has a piece of the pie. And you're a little weenie hut junior.
No, you're an exploitator who's hiding behind your womanhood.
Right, right.
Wow.
That's all
Okay.
it
And
is.
on that note, Lactoid, I love you.
I appreciate
I
it.
cannot tell. Was that flirting? Am I so neurodivergent? I can't tell.
I don't think it was.
At
but
the
it
end
could
there,
be.
Lav. I wasn't sure.
Look.
Oh,
I have
me?
no idea.
Oh, I'm constantly flirting with everyone, so yeah, probably.
Fair enough. Let's bring on. I think this is going to be the last
Bryce.
guest. I think we're gonna have one more caller.
Bryce.
You want Bryce? I want. Well,
Yes.
maybe we'll have two more. Because I want to hear what Layla has to say. Layla, you're alive. You were on screen.
You're alive.
What do you got? I'm mute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I was muted apparently too. Can my stream hear me now?
Oh wait, I have
Hold
to
on.
turn on the stream. Hold on.
Okay, I'm back. How long was I muted? Oh, unfortunate. Hopefully everyone could hear everything. Okay, what you got for us, Layla?
Okay, I think there's like two different types of exploitation. So I think if the OnlyFans worker or the sex worker is really rich, then I understand why these guys are saying, you know, that they're being exploited. But I also understand on the flip side when we're talking about women who can't make ends meet and then they're just using sex work in order to make make the bills and stuff like that. But I don't think that means that they can't consent. I don't think that just because they're like getting money from it, it means that they can't consent. In fact, I think that like sometimes when money is involved or a transaction or a contract is involved, it's more clear the consent lines, which I feel like Brittany might agree with the BDSM stuff, but Lav's going to disagree with.
I just feel like, and we've had this argument before, I just feel like if you make sexuality or sex a product, especially legally, then rape becomes a property crime, and that's a problem with me.
Rape,
If you make
property
sex a
crime?
product, rape becomes a property crime. I don't think that
If you
I
sell
don't-
sex and it's a barter, you can barter for it, you can pay money for it. If it's a product, if the thing that you're selling is a product and you don't and you take it, if you steal it, if you steal from a sex worker, that's rape. That becomes a property crime. That means that you can't legislate it the same as a sexual assault, or somehow it's different. Somehow a rape is different than a sexual assault. Or if you aren't happy with your product, what do you do then? It's just that it opens this whole new world of shit that we just should not go down.
But that's
personally.
different. It's different between like services. Like we pay for services all the time. Like massage therapy is a service. Just because you're paying for a massage doesn't mean that it's like you're paying for property.
Sure, but I don't think a massage is sex. I think that sex is different.
No, but it's
to
a
us than
service. It's a
massage.
difference between like a good and a service. So
Yes.
like I'm talking about sex work in terms of a service. It's a service that you're paying
Like
for.
a service industry, like
Right,
right.
right.
Okay, gotcha.
Sure,
Yeah,
but you're not. I
exactly.
mean, you're not even really. I mean, a lot of people don't even pay for prostitutes to have sex. A lot of people pay for them to leave, which is like a. I think that there. I mean, there's so many moral implications with this, but also, like I said with the landlord thing earlier, like I think I would even if you put massage next to sex, if there is a woman who can't pay her rent and the landlord says, "Well, you can give me a 2-hour massage." Or you can, if you can't pay your rent, you can fuck me or give me a blowjob. I would
What if
much
they said if you rake my
rather-
leaves? What if they made you do house like rake my leaves and I'll give
Yeah,
you
of
like,
course.
is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
No,
Yeah, I
see,
think
I
that's
think
fair.
that's wrong. Like you can't make them do labor in exchange for money because you up the rent. Landlords can't be corrupt this way, girl. Like you're doing these false equivalencies. That's hurting my brain. I agree with Layla.
It's not a false equivalency. It's a hypothetical in which you understand why sex is different than any other work.
Okay, how about this? We pay people for their bodies, whether they're physical trainers, whether they're wrestling coaches, whether we do MMA.
You can't pretend that sex is not different than any other work.
Sex
You
is different.
can't.
Like pie and cake are different, but it's still fucking dessert, girl.
I just don't think it should be. I think that's the
That's
degradation
fine
of
that
society.
you
I think
think
that's
they
going in a bad
I think
direction.
this is the other thing is I think when you take it away, so when you take that option away from women, so when we are saying that women's value is in their like sexual marketplace or whatever, like when we place so much value on women's looks and sex and this type of thing, but then okay, so much value and so much effort is being put into like women's appearances, women's like sexual prowess, I guess, and then you take the ability of women to use that to their advantage. It just seems like it's limiting women. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything to like hinder the
Well,
the, like,
I understand the
person that's paying
desperation.
for it.
I understand the desperation and the market, and I understand how women exist in the market. I understand how women want to get money. I understand all of that. So I don't think that we should criminalize like sex work. I don't think that prostitutes or sex workers should be given any consequence for the work that they do. I do believe that it should be illegal to buy sex from someone, though.
I have a
That's
I have
fine.
a I have a quick question for you, Lab, actually, in your like hypothetical where landlord someone can't pay their landlord, can't pay their rent, or maybe they're having trouble at work and they're about to lose their job. So you mentioned you think it's unethical for the landlord to be like, hey, uh I'll take $200 off your rent if you suck my dick, right? That would be unethical. Is it
Yeah.
still unethical if it isn't the landlord that brings that up, but the tenant? So the tenant's like, "Hey, I can't make this. I can't make the rent this month. You're going to kick me out. What if I did this for you instead?" So would that make any difference for you if it's
Well,
the
so that is
tenant
different because
or
that's not your employer. So in a prostitution basis, your employer is who is
I think it's
setting.
unethical.
in both
Sure.
cases?
Yeah,
I
like,
think
guys,
so,
business
but I
is
think to a
business,
different.
and know what business you're in.
It's obviously unethical both ways, but I think especially with the power dynamic of having you be an employee or someone who directly has to give money to or respond to a higher up, like a boss or
Yeah, she's
like if your boss
renegotiating the terms.
asks you to stay after work and work extra, you're like, oh fuck. But if he asks you for a blowjob,
But again, what if
different.
the employee, right, the person renegotiates the deal and says, "Well, I don't want to come in this weekend. I know you need us, right?
Yeah.
But in order to get out of it, I would offer you this sexual favor to get out of it." You
Yeah,
think
that's
that's the
unethical.
same level
That's rape.
unethical? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
It's rape.
that's rape. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
Even though
coercion and rape. There's no consent there. It's sex without consent. That's rape.
What?
It's coercion.
Because money's involved. That's the reason
No,
why
if
it's
you're
rape.
no, if you're saying no, if you're obfuscating something with the sexual favor, and you would rather just do the sexual favor for 15 minutes, even though that's not enthusiastic consent. So by definition, that's rape. Now there's some women who would rather suck dick than work 60 hours a week. I'm one of those. I would rather suck dick than do that, but I don't think that
But
should
if you
be.
did it, you would be raping those men whose poor dicks you sucked.
No, I don't think it should be socially acceptable in any form of like. I don't think it should be socially acceptable to make that a job or to trade that. Like I just don't think that is good for society.
Okay. Layla, thank you for coming in. Any
I
other
just
thoughts?
do want to say that I do think that like there is so what Lactoid I think is referring to is a certain type of sex worker who's maybe rich, who doesn't need the money, who is a very small percentage of sex workers, but I feel like gets focused on the most when we're talking about this topic is the sex workers that are super rich and it's very lucrative for them, and there's maybe some cases of them exploiting desperate men, but that's not the majority of sex workers. So I just want to point that out because
Well,
he's
thank you for
a silly
calling in,
guy.
Layla.
No, that's true. I back that. Like a majority of sex workers, even on OF, are making like $50 to $200 a month. Everybody fucking
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
Everyone
exactly.
relax, Layla. Always a pleasure. See you later.
Okay.
Okay. Gang. It's been fun. It's
Yeah.
been great.
It has been fun. Thank you.
We've had a wonderful discussion, a wonderful panel. Then we had wonderful call-ins. Gang, if you like the content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I will consensually take your money from you if you send it to me. So thank you again. Tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be having a Is Trump a Threat to Democracy debate. We're going to have IRI, we're going to have Josiah, and they're going to be facing it down against two opponents, one of which is a mystery because one person just ditched on me. But we'll figure it out. Gang. We're going to rate out who is still streaming. Well, you don't stream on Twitch, do you, Brittany?
No, I don't.
No, are you streaming right now?
I'm streaming on YouTube, but I don't think Lav is. Lav, are you streaming right now?
No.
Okay. So I guess we'll just rate out into. Let's go to Tuna Chip. Do we like Tuna Chip?
I love Tuna Chip. He's a perfect eunuch.
The perfect eunuch.
He's the perfect eunuch.
Tuna Chip.
I'm gonna go. Please follow me on Twitter, Impish Pixie with 2 E's. Thanks for having me. It was great, and love you guys. Bye.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Wick. Have a good
See
night.
you guys later. Bye.
Oh, lordy. Okay. Any thoughts? Any last minute thoughts? Interesting. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I definitely want a more ethical space for everybody. Read The Ethical Slut. I think it will help you. Sage says I'm gonna go watch porn now. I mean, corn. Damn. Yeah. I've been frequently posting on my OF. I have more things coming. I don't know. I just think people are still so uptight about sex, and they probably will for a long time because they're uptight about themselves. They're not having a relationship with their consciousness. They're not having a relationship with their bodies. It's okay to be modest. It's okay not to do corn. It's okay to not want to do OF. It's okay to raise your kids to not be SWs. It's okay to do so much in life. It's also okay to be an SW. It's also okay to do OF. It's also okay to support your children if they become adults who do SW work. You know, there's so much that's fine in life for this small, very short time we have on earth. So many things are so okay, but yet we spent generations on generations of generations of generations of people denying them their possibility of doing things because we are afraid. Like, we're just so afraid. We're so afraid. And if we were a little less fearful, you know, it's kind of like when your baby knocks their little knee on the ground and you freak out, they freak out. I wish we would stop freaking out so much and just be a little bit more stoic in the philosophy sense, to actually have a relationship with our feelings so we can have a healthy balance with them, a symbiotic relationship, right? We want enthusiastic consent, or at least informed consent. Doesn't have to be enthusiastic, but informed, right? That's really what we want here. And then we want to harm reduce, you know? I'll be back tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much for being here for a double stream show. I'm going to keep this live, so I'm not going to make it members only. That's why I came back on, so it could be its own little video. So if you guys need to rewatch it, or if you haven't finished it, here's your chance. Please leave a comment and a like. And if you want, exploit me. Thank you for all the super chats. Let me make sure I read them all. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this content creation. We're so lucky that we get to live in a world where I get to be a content creator, where you get to be a content creator, where we get to watch Wick and Erudite and everybody else be content creators. Like, this is an amazing time to be alive. Whether you're doing adult work or streaming, it is. And I hope that people don't ruin these platforms because of their greed. I really hope people don't ruin the platforms because they want money. I hope the platforms stay places where content creators can be here for a very, very long time without having to go to the extremes, you know, because I am kind of concerned about Twitch a little bit. Not that it matters. YouTube's the place to be. If you want to be family friendly, or if you want to be conscientious about children who might come across your stream, stay on YouTube. They obviously care, and they're investing all their money into content creation. But I don't understand what Twitch is exactly doing with their platform. Feels a little shady just because they allow minors on the site. But, you know, we're doing our best to harm reduce, right? So, okay, Nova, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is super chats from Nova. Thank you so much. I believe I read them all and replied to you on those. And let's see, there was one from Mr. Munchie. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. That was so sweet. That was really, really sweet. Okay. Confusion says it's still going to happen whether it's illegal or not, and the SWs are less protected if it's illegal. You know, again, even when it comes to marijuana or drugs, like, look, I'm in a country that it's a 12-year sentence as far as I know in Croatia if I'm caught with marijuana. So I'm not taking the chance, obviously. But 12 years to smoke a plant, like 12 years to have come on. Is this the construct we want to get behind, right? Are these the constructs that we want to support just because it's been in place, just because it's quote unquote traditional? Do we want to put people in prison for, like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, we should be fighting for the individual. And I think a society of individuals can make a good society. I think you can be a good person and do good for the world if you are more self-aware about how you're treating people. I do think Kyla is right. We need to work in the SW communities and encourage people not to take advantage of their customers. And customers need to know what they're consenting to when they sign up. If you are going to an SW for products, you're going to them for a service. You are doing business. You're doing business. You know, if they give you the girlfriend experience, understand that it's an experience, right? Now, if those workers do everything in their power, including introduce those men to their families, some people go crazy, then I think they're just the cruelest, most awful human beings. And I don't think that's because they're SWs. I think that's because they're shitty human beings. shitty people do shitty things, regardless of their jobs. Ask the Catholic Church about how many priests have been hidden and moved around because they were shitty, not because they were priests. Okay? All right. Thank you guys for being here. Let's listen to some Elvin on the way out. She's a beautiful musician, so talented with her harp. Link in the chat. I will see you guys tomorrow.